Ladies and gents, boys and girls, Monday, August the 7th, 2023. Welcome to the Daily Crow. Of course, as always, I'm your host, Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show of the Daily Crow. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I see James Kendall, Austin Miller, Babes and Waves, GA, Brendan M., who's on the road today. Safe travels, my friend. Ethan K., Evan Lusk, Gavin, what's going on? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. What a wild weekend it was, folks, as we've got a ton to get into here on this Monday. And let me say this. We got a ton to discuss, by the way, guys. We got a packed show for you. Hour number 3 will be our Q&A Power Hour. We'll take, of course, your questions, your comments, your calls at 843-790-3377. And I have to imagine there will be maybe some interesting banter, some interesting calls, some interesting commentary on the show today. In hour number 2, we got Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Can't wait to get his feedback, his takes on everything happening in the college football landscape. And in this first hour, we've got my good friend Brandon Marcello, national college football writer, reporter, analyst, what have you, for 24/7 Sports. A solid 36, 37-minute conversation with Brandon. Really fun stuff. We talked everything from conference realignment to South Carolina football, breaking down the SEC as a whole. Really, really great stuff. And, of course, Brandon, one of the best in the business and one of the most well-known in the college football space. Also in this first hour, we're talking a lot of gambling. I'm going to give you guys hear it every single day, right? The Prize Picks ad read. And I'm going to give you all my favorite prop plays that are on Prize Picks as we speak. My favorite prop plays going into the 2023 college football season. So we got a lot to get into here on today's show. Let me start by saying this. Again, first off, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. If you guys want to discuss, and we will discuss it, let me not be naive, the stuff that took place over the weekend with the commitment of Landon Duckworth. We'll start on the positive, right? Commitment of Landon Duckworth. But the misses on Jonathan Paylor, Jalewis Solomon, and what followed. I mean, the madness that followed. Social media, the Garnet Trust tweet. If you guys want to discuss that, I'm going to save that for the Q&A Power Hour because I more so want to hear you guys' thoughts. I mean, I feel like what's been said is what's been said. There's not really a lot more to, I'm not trying to be the one to beat a dead horse here and spend an entire 20-minute segment talking about a tweet or talking about NIL or what have you. Like, we all understand the realities of college football at this point, right? Like, we all get it. We know what's going on. So, I mean, what a wild weekend, though. What an eventful weekend. It's funny, guys. I've mentioned this before that, when you do what we do, it's inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you are in the crosshairs of those on Twitter and on social media, right? You make a take, you say something, you have a reaction to a game, you have a reaction to an event, whatever it might be. And you get put in the direct crosshairs of those on Twitter who seek out to make your life miserable, what have you, right? We've all been there. You've all seen TSUS there. You get what I'm saying. This weekend, though, was an example of when you're not at the center of it and you can sit back and just kind of watch it all play out and evaluate and see what's going on. It's actually wildly entertaining. It's wildly, wildly entertaining. Either way, guys, like I said, we can talk about all that later in the show. I'm more than welcome to hear from you. Would love to hear from you, actually. Hear your thoughts, hear your feedback. Because it's interesting times, obviously, in college football. And, I don't know that it's ever been so, kids have gone to different schools because of the bag, because of, a booster promising this, doing this, money being a factor in recruitment. It's never been so in our faces, though. And I think that's what people are having a really, really hard time grasping. Guys, again, with that being said, appreciate you all tuning in. We can talk about all that and more in the third hour. Again, I don't have a segment dedicated to that, But I'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, because it almost feels like it feels like South Carolina took an L this weekend, as weird as that sounds. Like, it felt like yesterday when we were doing the simulation going in, I was like, we desperately need a W, because it feels like we lost a game yesterday with the way social media is going crazy. And of course, the simulation did not help the cause, as we got blasted by Missouri last night. So a big one tonight in the season simulation series. We'll take on Texas A&M tonight, Jacksonville State tomorrow night, as we continue to roll with that. But that being said, guys, excuse me, I can't spit it out. That being said, we got a great conversation lined up. My good friend Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports, as we talked all things college football, SEC, Gamecocks, and everything in between. Sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation with our good friend Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports. As we sit less than 1 month from the start of the 2023 college football season, we're joined by national college football reporter for 24/7 Sports, Brandon Marcello. Brandon, I appreciate you taking the time. Again, my friend, I'll say this. I know it was brief, but it was a pleasure to cross paths with you at SEC Media Days and admiring your work from afar for quite a while, my man. What's going on? How are you? Appreciate you taking the time.
I'm doing well, and every day that passes by means we're closer to kickoff, and hopefully less and less speaking about NIL and conference realignment.
And trust me, Brandon, we'll get there in just a second. But obviously, I want to talk Gamecocks first. And speaking of not necessarily NIL, but on the recruiting front, South Carolina over the past week or so landing a big-time commitment in Dylan Stewart, the 2024 five-star edge. I want to speak more broad, though, Brandon, because, again, you see all these different programs, all these different coaches, the trajectories of each of them. When you look at South Carolina and Shane Beamer, the Gamecocks have recruited over their history at a pretty fair clip. I mean, you go back to what Steve Spurrier did. Even Will Muschamp, had solid recruiting classes. But when you look at what Shane Beamer's doing, pulling in Nicholas Harbor in the 2023 cycle, now you've got Dylan Stewart in the 2024 cycle. And there are plenty more where that came from. How impressive is it to you just what he's doing in Columbia, especially when you factor in just exactly what he inherited from the previous staff?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of that tail end there when Shane Beamer was there back on Steve Spurrier's staff, when the recruiting was hitting on all cylinders and they were doing so well in state, because obviously there was some great in-state talent that was coming through and in that region, I should say, in South Carolina in the early 2010s. And it reminds me a lot of that. I mean, listen, South Carolina is not the type of program that's going to get 4 or 5 stars in every recruiting class, but the fact that you can land 2 that will be like 2 difference makers in one single signing class potentially is something that you look at and go, wow. And that puts South Carolina in a position to compete in the quote-unquote SEC East. Now that we're getting rid of divisions, it puts South Carolina in a position in the SEC to be able to win double-digit games in a regular season potentially here within the next 3 years. Very impressed by what Shane Beamer's done there, not just recruiting, but also just rebuilding the culture there at South Carolina. It's interesting. I don't know how the fan base received his hiring at Oklahoma, but I know amongst a lot of us in the industry, when he went to OU and then over to South Carolina, we're all like, yeah, that just makes a lot of sense. And if they're wanting to hit on what really made them special under Steve Spurrier with recruiting, he was a big part of that, but also in rebuilding that culture. And we know that he was the type of coach that would build a really good staff because of all of his connections. And boy, he's done that. And it seems like, rarely do you sit there in off seasons and you go, wow, that coach made the right decision there in that hire. Or you go, wow, that's a heck of a hire, or that's a hire I wouldn't even thought of, but that makes a lot of sense. And this offseason in particular for Shane Beamer, I was so impressed with how he was able to backfill his staff and hiring coaches. Dow Loggins from Arkansas, a guy that hasn't called plays since he was in the NFL and didn't do so well in the NFL, but understands that he's got a really sharp mind and is an amazing recruiter just in his short time coaching college football. And also in the NFL, was lauded by all these coaches, but was put in terrible situations. It seemed like he got his chance to be a coordinator too early in his career, and he was thrown into the fire. He was almost destined to fail, and yet he did a pretty good job in the situations he was at in the context of everything. I say that to say this. Long story short, I've just been so darn impressed by what Shane Beamer's been doing every single turn and every single step of the way at South Carolina.
Brandon, after the way you finished 2022, there are now real expectations coming into year 3 of Shane Beamer. And you look at a log-jammed SEC East. Of course, we know it's Georgia at the top, probably Vandy at the 7th spot, although you could argue that maybe they finished 6th. But 2 through 6 is anybody's guess, right? I mean, there are a bunch of teams in that group that there are reasons you could convince me they'll win 9 games. There are reasons you could convince me they'll win 6. Where do you feel like going in this 2023 season when you factor in the return of Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells, which is a great place to start offensively, when you factor in their questions on the offensive front, the defensive front, some of the pieces they have returning on the defensive side, led by Nick Eamon-Warrior and DQ Smith at those safety spots. When you factor all that together, and oh, by the way, Beamer ball, the way they've won on special teams over the first 2 years, when you factor all those things in, where do you feel like South Carolina fits in a really crowded SEC East going into this season?
I think that they'll probably compete for third in the SEC East, which doesn't sound great to everybody. I think Tennessee still has the edge there. And the big thing with South Carolina is, as you mentioned, it's in the trenches. What are you going to do along the offensive line with Jalen Nichols out at left tackle? The running game needs to be much more productive this year. Take some pressure off of Spencer Rattler. Defensively, I love the secondary, but again, that defensive front is, you got to get more production out of them. And you mentioned the special teams. You talk about Beamer ball. Again, it's amazing the production they got out of special teams last year. One of the best in the country in all categories. But that is so difficult to translate year over year, more so than a great defense, so to speak. I think special teams is one of the toughest units to coach because, one, it's not just kicking and coverage units and all that stuff, but you're also trying to factor in luck. And you make your own luck, some people say, but getting turnovers, the bounce of the ball and everything, that's what Beamer ball is all about, is getting those turnovers and forcing turnovers. And South Carolina was majestic in that sense last year. Can that be consistent enough this year? Because that will be the difference in a game or two or a win or two potentially. But again, if South Carolina is going to compete in the SEC East this year, they need to churn up that running game somehow. And with that offensive line, I'm not quite seeing it this year. And then defensively, I got to see more from that defensive front. And I'm not sure that it's quite there yet either. And so having said that, this probably looks like a 7-win team, but under Shane Beamer, as we've seen the last couple of years, he's always good for 1, and like last year, 2 kind of upset wins and things we just didn't quite see coming up on the radar.
Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports. Brandon, you give a great national perspective on all things college football. So from the national scope, when you view this South Carolina program, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, moving to 2024, the additions of Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC, no more divisions, right? And then we're going to a 12-team playoff. I've said before, Brandon, because, of course, the goal objective of every fan base in the SEC, call it for what it is to get to Atlanta, win an SEC title, what have you. But I think a program like South Carolina and what Shane Beamer can do is get them to a point where they're winning 8 to 9 games a year consistently. Not saying that's going to start this year, but get to that point. Every 3 or 4 years, we'll say, maybe 2 or 3, you have the right quarterback, you have the right schedule, you got a veteran team, whatever it might be, and you pop off and win double-digit games and you make a college football playoff. I feel like schools like South Carolina, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Kentucky, those middle-of-the-pack teams that have great upside, they're all sort of, in that situation because winning the SEC is only going to get tougher. And when you look at a 12-team playoff, as you mentioned previously, I mean, if you're a double-digit win SEC team, you're going to have a really strong case to get in the college football playoff. Do you feel like those are realistic and fair expectations? And if not, what would you label as fair expectations for the South Carolina football program?
Yeah, sure. I think South Carolina is that type of program under Shane Beamer that once every 4 years, you're probably in position to make a playoff in a 12-team playoff. As you said, you hit that 10-win number. I think that's going to be kind of the magic number for an SEC team moving forward. And South Carolina is in that group of schools, as you mentioned. And then also, people talk about strength of schedule and all this stuff. That's not, to me, if you're just an SEC team, that's just, don't even factor that. Well, we played this team in the non-conference. No, just win 10 games, no matter your schedule. If you're an SEC team, and you're going to have a chance to reach this new 12-team playoff. And with all the chaos that's going on with realignment right now, I think the SEC is even in a stronger position. I mean, I don't want to talk, look at analytics and all that stuff, but hey, I mean, what's stopping the SEC from maybe getting 4 teams in this 12-team playoff every few years? Who knows? But yeah, Carolina's in that spot. But again, how often? Probably, if you're under Shane Beamer, probably once every 4 years, having the potential to jump into that playoff party.
Brandon, let's jump to the SEC West, because there are so many intriguing storylines, from who's going to play quarterback at Alabama, LSU trying to go back-to-back in the SEC West and maybe finish the job this time against the East representative, a.k.a. Georgia, as we all know and expect. Texas A&M with the Bobby Petrino thing. Does it work? Can A&M have a massive bounce-back season and make some noise in the West? You go down the list, man. Lane Kiffin, Sam Pittman with KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, a new beginning in Starkville with the passing of the late, great Pirate. And I'm forgetting one. Who am I forgetting here? Oh, by the way, yeah, like I mentioned, Kiffin as well. If there's one, oh, by the way, Hugh Freeze at Auburn. My goodness, he's been making waves on the recruiting trail. I'm sitting here drawing a blank. Of all the top storylines in the SEC West going into this season, what's the one that jumps out to you, or the one that you're most excited to follow? Because it feels like there's so much fireworks and so much dramatics in that side of the SEC.
Yeah, you combine. You got. There's not often you get one place where you get all of that combined, fireworks and the dramatics, and it's Texas A&M. And what that offense is going to look like, and whether it's successful. And if it's not successful, what's that relationship like with Bobby Petrino, Steve Adazio, and Jimbo Fisher on the offensive side of the ball? And how does that translate on game days and when things are going wrong? They're saying all the right things right now. And I believe that they are in earnest, Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino, working together in lockstep to make sure this offense is explosive. And Bobby Petrino is going to be calling the offense, even though Jimbo Fisher just won't quite clearly admit to it publicly for whatever reason. I guess he's got to help his ego a little bit, or at least maybe put on a play when he's on stage talking to people. It's a very strange situation. But the thing is you're dealing with two fiery personalities, two controlling personalities that don't take direction from people very often. This year will be Bobby Petrino's first year where he's got to take direction or answer to someone on game day on the sideline for the first time in 21 years. He has not been an assistant coach on game day since he was at Auburn in 2002. And then a couple of years later, he was trying to steal Tommy Tuberville's job as head coach. People change over the years, but how much do they really change? And Jimbo Fisher, he's used to calling plays. That's all he does, even when he's as a head coach. So what happens, say, week 3, week 4, when things aren't going well and they've had all these 3 and outs and things aren't working, and Jimbo just goes, Bobby, let me do this. I don't know. Having said that, I think Bobby Petrino's one of the best play callers to be in college football in the modern era. He's severely underrated in that aspect. I think, obviously, because of his off-the-field stuff, that gets overshadowed by that. But I watched him up close at Arkansas when I previously covered Arkansas in the late 2000s. And I'll tell you, he gave Nick Saban headaches in preparation and on game days, despite Alabama winning those games, especially on the opening drive, those opening scripts. Bobby Petrino is a master. I would say I think he might be the best in college football when it comes to an opening script. to a game, those first 7 to 11 plays that you develop before you go out there. He's just got an amazing mind for that. And A&M's got the pieces. They've got number 1 recruiting class, number 2, number 3, number 4 of the last 4 to 5 years. They've got the pieces. Despite losing some of those pieces through the transfer portal, they still have them. And it's either this year or next year that they should be a team that's competing for an SEC title with that talent. I don't think it's this year. I think it's next year if I'm looking at the window. But the window is creaking open this year, and they need to challenge, I think, for double-digit wins for this season to be termed a success there. So it is so much going on there, but there's a lot at stake at Texas A&M this year. And then not to mention that, listen, if they have another losing season, they have another 5-win season like they did last year, people wondering about the buyout for Jimbo Fisher. If you want my opinion, if he wins 5 games again this year, they will fire him. They will pay out that buyout and they will start anew because there's so much at stake next year going in the SEC. You got big brother Texas coming into the conference, and that's changing the dynamic of everything there. The recruiting efforts are going to start evening out a little bit because if you look at the analysis of Texas A&M since they joined the SEC in 2012 and left Texas behind in the Big 12, A&M's recruiting in state is almost flipped as far as percentage of blue chip recruits that they've been able to get inside the state there. And that's going to start evening out. It's already evening out, but it's going to start evening out even more here in the next few years because Texas is in the SEC. And this is an inflection point for the Aggies. And if Jimbo Fisher has a losing season this year, I guarantee you that A&M will be more than willing to pay that buyout and start anew with a new coach.
Brandon, Minnesota back in 1934 to 1936 was the last time we had a three-peat national champion. Many have tried at it. All have failed. The Georgia Bulldogs will look to become the first since the Gophers did it way back when. They've got the best roster in college football. They've got what most folks are calling a quote-unquote easy schedule. Georgia's a shoe-in, pencil them in, they're going to win the national title, right? Wrong. You and I both know it's just not that simple. So, I mean, I'll actually ask you, do you think it's that simple, or do you think Georgia may have a bump in the road or two? Again, if you replace your quarterback, you replace both starting tackles, Mike Bobo's a new offensive coordinator. I mean, certainly they're going to be the pick in the SEC, but we all know, again, the challenges of doing what they're trying to do this year. And I think the fact that Georgia's even the favorite to do it just really speaks to Kirby Smart and the fantastic program that he has built, the true juggernaut in Athens. What do you make of the Dogs this year? I mean, again, is it as simple as penciling them in as the national champion, or do you think there's real reasons why, the field could take home the trophy this year?
Yeah, they're my pick to win it. And it's because that roster has been so consistent in this transfer portal era. Everybody else just seems to get debilitated or they get really affected at some positions. And I would say they're probably like one of 3 rosters across the country that year to year in this transfer portal era has been able to hold it on. And that's why Georgia, which has been a developmental program, taking that Alabama blueprint, I think Kirby Smart, instead of us talking about him taking the Alabama blueprint, I think he took the Alabama blueprint and improved upon it and has almost perfected it there at Georgia as far as a developmental program. But I do think there are much more questions here at Georgia than maybe we're actually shining light on. Listen, they lose Jalen Carter to the NFL, of course, a generational type defensive tackle. Bear Alexander, who is going to step in there and maybe be the next big name, he transfers out to USC. And yet a lot of people, including myself, we just sat there like a day or two later and went, yeah, they'll be fine. I mean, will they? We don't quite know that. And then the quarterback spot, I think a lot of us still have it programmed in our brain. We need to shut it off that Stetson Bennett was just a former walk-on. Well, no, he was a great quarterback. I wouldn't say he was elite. I think he was great, on the precipice of being an elite quarterback in college football. Is Carson Beck really going to be an improvement? I think a lot of people just almost assume that he's going to be just as good, if not an improvement. There's a lot of questions there. But elsewhere across the roster, everything's strong and great and elite, and they should win it. And when we talk about programs that could compete against Georgia. I think right now the top two contenders are Ohio State, which obviously pushed them to the brink last year, but Ohio State again, they're having to replace a lot of pieces there, including quarterback, and then Michigan. I love the way Michigan has built that roster, and Jim Harbaugh, especially in the trenches. They're very well balanced. They could do anything they want offensively against you. And defensively, they just have seemingly star makers being produced every year along that defensive line. But if you look in the SEC, I think the top contenders there against Georgia are Bama, LSU, and A&M. And right now, I'd say LSU is about an inch ahead of Alabama as we talk in the preseason, just because LSU has their quarterback situation figured out with Jaden Daniels, despite, for whatever reason, people still thinking like, hey, is Jaden Daniels actually the best quarterback there? Maybe is it Garrett Nussmeier? No, Jaden Daniels is the guy right now. But Bama, I mean, what the heck are they going to do at quarterback? Their roster, I think, is, it's the second most talented in the SEC. But, man, there's some weak points happening there. And for Bama, the fact that they had to go out to the transfer portal and grab two players to help that secondary from the group of five at a position that Nick Saban coaches, that shows you that just as far as depth, maybe not starters, but depth, Alabama has kind of swung and missed on the recruiting trail the last few years. And that makes you wonder, prompts questions about whether Alabama can be a championship program this season.
Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports. Brandon, you mentioned top of the show, realignment has been the hot topic of conversation in college football over the last few weeks. Let's start with the Pac-12. What are the odds they survive? Because it just feels like day after day after day, teams are getting plucked. We've heard for a while the thought of 3 mega conferences, and I think many of us kind of just acknowledged it and sort of laughed it off, shrugged it off. And, those of us who grew up watching, Reggie Bush and Southern Cal and Washington and Arizona State with those late games right on the East Coast, that may not be much of a reality anymore. The sense of that being via the Pac-12. Your overall thoughts on the conference? And I mean, it feels like the conference is on life support at this point.
Yeah, it is, and it sucks. And if you're a college football or even college basketball, but I would say college football mainly, fan, if the Pac-12 folds or it becomes something that resembles more like the Mountain West, it's going to hurt the sport. But why? We need a West Coast footprint that is competitive and nationally relevant for college football to remain healthy, in my opinion. Because now that if this conference falls apart and you start bringing in Arizona schools of the Big 12, or maybe Oregon and Washington, or maybe even Stanford and Cal into the Big 10, college football is not going to resemble anything what it used to be like. Everybody's just going to be part of the quote unquote, NFL, so to speak. And you're just going to have divisions within that. You're not going to have some natural rivalries continue. You're not going to have some annual games that you're always able to pencil in around this time of year. And out on the West Coast, you're eliminating a lot of West Coast games when you have, say, an Arizona or an Arizona State playing half of their conference schedule on the road in Texas, or even at UCF or Cincinnati. It changes things. It also changes the dynamic. It also changes the style of play in college football. There's a reason why it's Pac-12 after dark and not Big 12 after dark. One, because time zones, obviously, but also because of the style of play that lent itself to more high-scoring, dramatic affairs coming down to the last minute. Style of play is going to change. Ask Texas A&M and Mizzou when they left the Big 12 for the SEC and how they had to change the way they played. In personnel, one, and secondly, in philosophy. There's a lot of reasons why realignment, but in particular, the dying on the vine that is Pac-12 is detrimental to the game of college football. And I'm not sure a lot of people have thought it through that way. I think a lot of us have gotten caught up in just the perverted excitement in watching teams move around. It's almost like fantasy football. We're moving these pieces around and it's exciting to see new things happening. But in the end, I don't think it's healthy at all for the sport. And it's especially not going to be good for fans. I mean, good luck if you go to games still. Good luck traveling halfway across the country every other week, during the season and trying to get to games. You're just not going to be able to do it. It's become a TV product. It's become an NFL product, and in a lot of ways. And it's incredible how quickly this all has happened with the Pac-12 now sitting there on life support. And either way, the Pac-12 just, even if it does survive, it's going to look nothing like it did just a couple of years ago.
And continuing, Brandon, the realignment talks, the ACC making noise this week. Florida State's board of chairmen signaling that, they do have the intent to leave the ACC, which didn't necessarily shock me when you think about the brand that is the Florida State Seminoles. But, I mean, you look, Florida State, Clemson, that's a talking point as well. We've heard rumors maybe they could go to, the Big Ten. I mean, what do you think the future of the ACC is? Many Gamecock fans, of course, say, could Clemson come to the SEC? Could Florida State come? What do you see there? And it also sounds like, I think I saw an article you wrote that you don't expect the SEC to expand, at least at this moment, beyond the 16-member institutions that it will have next year. So thoughts on that? And of course, like I mentioned, the future of the ACC, especially if you lose your top two dogs in FSU and Clemson.
Yeah, listen, Florida State's been doing this for the last year. It ramped up this past spring when Florida State finally decided to start going public with it, at least behind closed. I say public, but at least actually going public with it amongst their peers and chirping more about how they wanted more revenue. This really is nothing new that we saw from Florida State here recently in their Board of Trustees meeting, saying we deserve more money. We're not sure we could survive in the ACC and we need to start looking elsewhere potentially. They were saying that, AD Michael Alford, the president, they were saying that at the ACC spring meetings back in May. And we wrote plenty about that, and it was upsetting to a lot of ACC administrators across the way. And listen, there's been 7 members there in the ACC who have been actively looking for the last year of a potential way out. And the 2 schools really leading that have been Florida State and Clemson. And I it was interesting when you listen and you watch that Board of Trustees meeting, you had one trustee member say, give us an exit plan within the next 12 months. Provide us something now that we're talking about this. I mean, they've been talking about it ad nauseum behind the scenes. And they finally did it publicly in that board meeting. But in executive sessions, they've been talking about this for the better part of a year, about how to break the grant of rights. And you heard the chairman say that the grant of rights is not what's going to keep them in the ACC. The fact of the matter is that, yes, it is. That's what's going to keep them in the ACC. That is what is keeping them in the ACC. Otherwise, Florida State would have I tell you that right now. Florida State would be gone. They would be out right now if that grant of rights wasn't an issue. The problem is that no one's going to pay their way out. No one's going to help them at all. Yes, Florida State is a desirable brand, but no one's going to help pay to get them out. The SEC won't even do that with OU and Texas coming out early. They got to deal with their own thing with the Big 12. So it's not going to happen with Florida State with that. Now, what are the options? Big 10, SEC are the big options. I think that the brass there wants to go to the Big 10, from what I've been told, which is interesting for a lot of reasons. We'll see. I'm not so sure the Big 10 right now, is open to that, especially if it's something like where they're dealing with their grant of rights and how's that going to look and what's that, I don't know. Same with the SEC, obviously, because as you mentioned, I've written about that. The SEC is just not interested in expansion right now. Right teams come along, yeah, they'll think about it, but is it Florida State and Clemson with the grant of rights situation and potentially hurting their relationship already with ESPN? which owns the ACC grain of rights, or not owns a grain of rights, but has that partnership, obviously. There's a lot going on there. Now, talk about scenarios. I'll throw this scenario out to you, and I haven't written about this, and I probably should, but don't be surprised if, say, Florida State does exit the ACC and says, well, we'll pay the penalties and we'll go to court with you or whatever. But they do so as an independent. They go independent. And they try to ride that out potentially for however long they have to before joining a conference. I think that's very much a possibility that's on the table, and not just for Florida State, but potentially Clemson. Because I think if Florida State were to test that out and actually do it, Clemson has been very much on the same wavelength as Florida State is about their future and what to potentially do. And that includes maybe going independent. These are all options that have been weighed by those 7 programs, but in particular Clemson and Florida State. So when you hear Florida State chirping, Clemson's chirping too, but they're just not doing it as publicly and as being as boisterous as Florida State has been doing. So, stay tuned to that, but I just don't think I don't know. I try to, listen, we always want to hear, hey, here's what's going to happen. I want this. But I'm going to tell you something. Anybody that tells you they know what's going to happen with realignment and everything is talking out their rear ends, because no one knows except for really a handful of people, because they have to keep it tight at these schools. It's usually their general counsel and their president and maybe their AD. But sometimes the AD doesn't even quite know, which is crazy to think, but rarely does the AD, are they up to speed to it every single day. It's usually the president, the general counsel, and maybe one other big time power broker. And that's it. And it is quiet. And they have to keep it that way for legal reasons, and also just because any little trip up could mess the entire situation up. So what's going to happen? I don't know. But Florida State wants out. I mean, they don't want to stay at all. But if they were going to leave, they would have left by now. So unless they find a new avenue, which I think is potentially independence here in the next year or two, they're locked into the ACC.
Brandon, you mentioned college football is going to look nothing like we remember it. I would say it's already there. Last thing before I get you out of here, are you worried about the future of the sport? Again, you're someone like me. You love this game. I'm sure you grew up watching games, and, change is always met with resistance. But, I mean, this thing is radically changing with NIL, with portal, with realignment, other things. Are you worried about the future of college football, that you think we may look up in 10 years and it be a product we don't even recognize?
Yeah, potentially. And yes, I will say this, like, as far as a TV viewing product, it's not going to be all that different, because you're going to sit down on Saturdays and get to watch games. But if you're a fan that actually you're involved with a singular team, and that team has moved conferences, and you've got a full new schedule and differences there, and you like to go to maybe one away game a year or two, or for that matter, you like going to, a home game every year. Well, the schedule is going to be different. You're probably not going to be able to travel as much as you want, if at all. And that's going to change kind of your ties to that program. They're probably not going to be as deep. And that's what's going to, when we talk about college football not being the same and maybe the product being hurt, that's what I mean. I mean, for me, I'm obviously a college football fan, but I'm also a reporter. But, on Saturdays, I'm either on the road covering a game, or I'm at home watching like 9 games simultaneously on my screen. And that's not going to change for me. But if I was rooting for a singular team and one team, it's changed, and it is changing. And I wonder about access for programs in the postseason. Yes, we're going to 12 teams. And the whole point of that in the college football playoff is to expand options and access. But with the consolidation of the sport, it's almost becoming like, well, it's going to be Big Ten teams and SEC teams with 1 or 2 ACC and Big 12 teams mixed in there. And what is Group of 5 football going to look like even? and the AAC, the MAC, how's this going to affect MAC football? How's this going to affect Mountain West football? Is the Mountain West going to become stronger? Or because Pac-12 football is dying, does that actually hurt recruiting for the Mountain West? Believe it or not, there's a lot of dominoes that will fall with this, that even if you're not being directly affected by realignment, it's going to affect you somehow, some way. And then also this, you hear Florida State chirping as much as they are because of money. And the thing that struck out to me is, we all know everything's become so much more expensive over the last year or two with inflation, whatever. Those words are they're bigger than me. I have no idea what all that means, but I know that when I go to the grocery store, I go buy something, it's much more damn expensive now than it was a year ago. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? And that, of course, is translated in construction costs and also just operating costs, these athletic departments. And listening to the Florida State Board of Trustees meeting recently, they're building a new facility, or have been building a new facility that's very similar to what Clemson did a while back. And they were saying that the costs for that are 30 to 40% higher for a similar building than it would have been a year or two ago. Costs are going up. And that's why all these programs are scared to death that they're going to get left behind, because money drives everything. Everything's so much more expensive now. There's less money out there to go around, as we've seen with the consolidation of these conferences, but also because as a result of media companies laying off and cutting back on costs and being more selective with what television packages they have. It's every program for itself right now, and everybody wants more money. And the problem is there's not enough to go around, and some programs are going to be kicked to the curb, and we are actively seeing that right now.
Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports, does great work. Brandon, let everybody know who's tuned in, where they can check out all of your work.
Just go to 247sports.com. Follow me on socials, Twitter or X or whatever the heck we're calling it now, B Marcello, and then all other socials, Instagram, TikTok, Brandon Marcello. Go check it out.
Brandon, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Yeah, no problem. I love it.
Okay, that was Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports. Appreciate him taking the time. Really, really good stuff in that convo. Like I mentioned, guys, not just Gamecocks, but of course, realignment, the game of college football, SEC, and everything in between. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break, but on the other side, we're going to talk some gambling here on this Monday as I give you some of my favorite prop plays via our friends at Prize Picks entering the 2023 season. All that and more as we keep the convo rolling here on this Monday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8255. 8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, August the 7th, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in as we sit just 26 days away until toe meets leather in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Gamecocks finally kick off this 2023 football season. South Carolina well underway with fall camp as they get ready for the start of the 2023 season. Guys, I want to say again, thank you so much to Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports for taking the time to chat. Really, really good stuff from Brandon. Be sure to shoot him a follow on social media. Really great stuff. Again, like I mentioned, one of the best in the business. And it truly was a pleasure to cross paths with him at SEC Media Days. And let me say this too, guys. I understand the feelings of most of you because I feel the same way in the sense of we're so tired of talking about conference realignment. We're so tired of talking about NIL. We're so tired of talking about transfer portal and like the future of the sport. Not because it's not important. It's very important. But we love talking ball, man. Like we love talking actually on the field, what's going to happen, giving predictions, giving projections. So that's exactly what we're going to do here on this Monday. You hear the ad read at the beginning of every single show Our friends over at Prize Picks, make sure you go to prizepicks.com or you download that Prize Picks app. And when you sign up, use that promo code TSUS to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Do that because there's a lot of value to be had with our friends at Prize Picks this season going into the 2023 football season. We're going to dive into some of my favorite prop plays entering this year, and they're not just all South Carolina. Really, what sparked this was a Gamecock or two was finally added to the list of players that you could place a wager on their prop, over, under totals, what have you. So we are going to start. Again, these are my favorite Prize Pick prop plays, which I'm subject to add more. I feel good about all these. I'm subject to add a couple of more before kickoff, and I'll make sure to keep you guys updated. Like I mentioned before, you're going to get more gambling content than you have ever gotten in the history of the Spurs Up Show during this football season. So we're going to be giving weekly Prize Picks plays as well, probably on Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll discuss, we'll talk. I'll lock in my picks for that weekend. Also, we're going to do spreads. We're going to do over-unders, everything. Gambling is going to be a huge part of our content this season. That being said, there is some insane value that I highly suggest you run. Sprint as fast as you can to Prize Picks and take advantage. And we're going to start with Spencer Rattler. And guys, I love Prize Picks. They're a fantastic business partner. At times, though, I don't understand what they are doing with these numbers and with these totals. I recall this time last year, I said it to you guys, and we had these conversations during the season in the Big Cock Club Discord about the over-under passing yards total for Spencer Rattler. I believe was somewhere around 2950, 2975, just below 3,000 yards. I said, there's no way Rattler goes under that total. And thankfully, the last 3 weeks happened because he was trending to go under the total. 400 passing yards against Tennessee. That certainly helped the cause, and the over cashed. But coming into this season, the over-under passing yards total for Spencer Rattler, and I almost cannot believe it. I'm literally take all the money you have and sprint to Prize Picks because this is free money. This is free money. It doesn't matter if you think South Carolina is going to go 5-7 or 10-2. This is free money. 2,500 and a half passing yards. 2,500 and a half passing yards is what Prize Picks has for Spencer Rattler right now. Hammer, and I mean hammer, the over here. I mean, guys, Spencer Rattler had 3,026 passing yards last season, and it was an abysmal season for 90% of the season for him. Spencer Rattler had over 3,000 passing yards in the Marcus Satterfield offense. There is absolutely no chance, barring the dreaded I word I'm not even going to bring up, there is no chance Spencer Rattler finishes with less than 2,500 passing yards. There's just no way. And you think about this too, the fact that South Carolina, as we all know, they're going to lean on Spencer Rattler and the passing game. South Carolina, I don't think it's a hot take to say the Gamecocks are going to throw the football more. When you look at the weapons on the outside and the question marks in the rushing attack. So Spencer Rattler over 2,500 and a half passing yards, that is literally free money. To go with it, 16 and a half passing touchdowns. That's the over-under for Spencer Rattler. Guys, he had 18 touchdowns last season. 18 passing touchdowns last season. You're telling me he's not going to get to 17 this season? Hammer the over. Over 16.5. I'm not being biased here, guys. I really think what's happening, though, is Prize Picks is looking at South Carolina. They're looking at the deficiencies in the run game, on the offensive line, brand new OC. Rattler was very inconsistent. But still, I just don't see a path in which Spencer Rattler goes under 16.5 passing touchdowns. I don't see it. I just don't see it. 2,500.5 passing yards, 16.5 passing touchdowns. Smash the over on both. Against South Carolina, they're going to throw the football more. You have Juice Wells. You've got some nice weapons on the outside. I know there's question marks at wide receiver outside of Juice, but we all know there's talent in that room. You add Trey Knox. Is the running game going to be there to support? Probably not, but that's okay. You're going to be leaning on Spencer Rattler to carry the offense. 2,500.5 passing yards, 16.5 passing touchdowns. Over, smash them both. That is literally free money from our friends at Prize Picks. Now, I got some other plays as well, guys. They're not all Gamecocks right now. Spencer Rattler is the only Gamecock listed on the Prize Picks front, but there is other value to be had across college football. Sticking with quarterbacks, I go to Drake May, and I love the over 3,200.5 passing yards for this season. 3,200.5 passing yards. This is a guy, ACC Player of the Year last year. By the way, this is not like a prediction for week one or anything like that. Over the grand scheme, over the grand total of the 2023 season, I love the over total passing yards. 4,321 of those he had last season for the Tar Heels. I understand he loses a couple of his top weapons, but UNC has guys waiting in the wings, man. And guys, it's the ACC and ACC defenses. And yes, they have a new OC in Chip Lindsey. You talk to those UNC folks, though, the passing concepts are going to stay the same. The passing concepts that were so successful last year, they're not changing. They're going to put Drake May in the best possible position to have a breakout year, have a big season, and launch himself into being the top quarterback taken in the NFL draft. I don't know where they get 3,200.5 passing yards from. I understand the offensive line has some questions. The physicality up front, their running game's also a question. But 3,200.5 to me, after a 4,300-yard season last year, hammered the over on Drake May. I'm loving the overs today, folks. Bo Nix is the next quarterback I move to. The over 2,950.5 passing yards for Oregon's QB1. His top two receivers and his top tight end returned from a season ago, and that was in a season he had 3,593 passing yards last season. I don't know how Prize Picks got their numbers. I really don't, guys. But there's been a lot of these I looked, I'm just like, after what they did last year, how can you set that as the total? Like, I really, truly, genuinely am having a hard time. And, listen, our friends at Prize Picks, great business partner, but we're going to rob them. We're going to take all of their money when we win all of these prop plays. Over 2,950.5 passing yards. I know Bo Nix was the butt of jokes when he was at Auburn and when he left. Bo Nix is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He will hit at minimum 3,000 passing yards this season. We go back to the SEC at the running back position. Ole Miss's Quinshon Judkins. I've got him at the over 1,300.5 rushing yards. This one is really imperative on the fact that he stays healthy. That is the biggest thing that I think could be the deterrent of this pick. Because you look at Ole Miss. Here's a misconception that Lane Kiffin, they just want to throw. They love to run the football, guys. I mean, they love to run it. And you got 4 of 5 offensive linemen back up front. Quinshon Judkins, a guy that ran for 1,567 rushing yards a season ago. This is admittedly probably the play that I feel the most. It's a risk, but I like taking the risk on Quinshon Judkins. 1,300.5. as long as he can stay healthy. That is the big thing. Our good friend Connor O'Gara, it's funny, I read a piece on Quinshon Judkins and the sophomore slump this morning, and that was right after I placed the wager, and I'm thinking to myself, man, what terrible timing to read that. But I like Judkins, man. I'm sticking with the pick. He's obviously capable of eclipsing that number. As long as he stays healthy, he will do so. We move to the wide receiver position. Texas's Xavier Worthy. And this is the first case of the unders. I'm going under 825.5 receiving yards for Xavier Worthy. Here's why. It's not a knock on Worthy. He is extremely talented and will be one of Quinn Ewer's top targets in this 2023 season. But Texas adds Adonai Mitchell, who is a Georgia Bulldog transfer portal pickup, and also they add 3 extremely talented true freshmen. So they've added a ton of talent in that wide receiver room. Also, Jordan Whittington is their other weapon on the outside. I think he's going to take a lot of catches, a lot of yards away from Xavier Worthy, especially factoring in that Xavier Worthy is that top guy that everybody's going to have their attention on. He had 760 yards last season. I think with added talent, quarterback play should be better. So that could push it over, and Texas could be unstoppable. I've got Xavier Worthy, though, under that 825.5 receiving yard total. Again, not because he's not good enough to eclipse that, but I think there are so many other weapons. They also have a fantastic tight end that is back, one of the best in college football as well. I think because there's so many weapons there, I just don't think Xavier Worthy is going to get the football quite as much as he did last season. Under 825.5 receiving yards for me for this season. Back to the SEC we go, and Jaden Daniels of the LSU Tigers. I've got Jaden over 18.5 passing touchdowns. Jaden Daniels was one of the surprises last year, right, with his play. Started slow, that Florida State game. They lose that game, of course, but, LSU, the rest is history. Win the SEC West, beat Alabama, of course, got blasted by Georgia in the SEC title. Who didn't get blasted by Georgia? And then impressive in the bowl game. I think Jaden Daniels is set up, and he's a guy who's not being talked about a lot. I know he was preseason all SEC, but not being talked about quite as much as some others. LSU, guys, is absolutely loaded. And I mean loaded on the offensive side. All 5 offensive linemen are back. Malik Neighbors on the outside at wide receiver, right up there with Juice Wells as maybe the best wide receiver in the SEC. And they add Logan Diggs at the running back position. But I still think there's some question marks in regards to the rushing attack and the running game and how that shakes out. I think Jaden Daniels, though, I put my stock in Jaden Daniels. I think 18.5 is too conservative. This is a guy last year that was right at 17. I think he goes over that 18.5. And I think LSU, there's a reason they're my pick to win the SEC West. I believe in Jaden Daniels. I believe in LSU. I believe in that offense, and I'm going over 18.5 passing touchdowns. And my final play that we're locking in here before the start of the 2023 football season, we go to Clemson. The running back position, Will Shipley for the Clemson Tigers. I'm going under 12.5 rushing touchdowns. And let me also say this, guys. When it comes to gambling, we are taking all bias out of it, right? If I took the over on Will Shipley, guess what? I don't want him to score a single touchdown against South Carolina, but I want Will Shipley to cash. If I bet on Clemson, I hate them, but I want them to cash. You see what I'm saying? So when I give you picks, we're taking all the bias out of it. Don't matter if you're with Clemson, you're with Georgia, whoever you're with. It does not matter to me. I've got Will Shipley, though, under 12.5 rushing touchdowns. I think splitting carries with Phil Maffa, that's number one, right? They've got a fantastic 1-2 punch there. I think Maffa's a guy they like to use around the goal line. They like to sub him in a lot anyways. I do think Phil Maffa going to take off some of the load. They're going to have a fantastic rushing game, but I think he's going to take some of those touchdowns. Also this, guys, I think under Garrett Riley, they're going to be a much more pass-happy offense, in 2023. They're going to be much better throwing the football. Cade Klubnik under Garrett Riley. I think the passing attack will be much better. They won't have to lean on Will Shipley in the ground game quite as much. I still think Will Shipley's going to be very, very good. I wouldn't be surprised if he got to 12 rushing touchdowns. I believe last year he was at 15. But I think because of that, the Garrett Riley scheme, I mean, Clemson's got 4 or 5 back on the offensive line, but I think the Garrett Riley scheme, quarterback not being a just straight up deficiency for them, and Phil Maffa taking off some of the load for Will Shipley, I think under 12 and a half cashes in regards to rushing touchdowns for Clemson's RB1. Guys, what are your plays? What are your predictions? What are your thoughts? Those are my top prop plays entering the 2023 college football season. Going to be a fun time this year playing with our friends at Prize Picks as we do our best to break the bookie this college football season. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we got my good friend Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. He joins the show to talk all things Gamecocks, SEC, and everything in between. All that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, August the 7th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Hey, be sure to go check out tsus.store as kickoff quickly approaches. I will get to you guys a guaranteed by kickoff delivery date here in the near future. Of course, we've collabed with the College Collection and Walker Kennedy Art for the Beat North Carolina shirts and all of the Beat shirts in that collection. To get your Beat UNC shirt by kickoff, you must order it by Friday. So just be aware of that. If you want that shirt for game one, which, let's be honest, you do, you need to order it by Friday to ensure by kickoff delivery. Okay. So anyways, we've posted that on social media. Check out the link. I'll actually add that link to our link tree as well right after the show. Also, guys, again, for our merch, tsus.store, thespursupshow.com. It'll probably be that week before kickoff, I would say, that if you order by then, I need to talk with my merch guys and to see exactly what the timeline is, how things line up in regards to when you need to order by to make sure you have your Beamer Ball, Beamer Rattler, Shane Storm, whatever it might be, your merchandise before kickoff. Bisbee says, you're going to offer the QB1 shirt in black. We are working on getting that up right now, as well as getting hats uploaded to the store. I am expecting by end of week, hats will be live over at tsus.store, thespursupshow.com, etc. So really excited, guys, as we gear up for the 2023 football season. Looking forward to getting to kickoff, man, and really getting into football. I mean, that's the big thing is, we're going to talk more conference realignment and stuff with Mark Rogers, what have you, but I cannot wait for actual football to take place because all the madness that took place over the weekend, and like I said, we'll save that for the third hour, our Q&A power hour. We'll get into that. I'm sure you guys will have thoughts, opinions, what have you, everything that was said and took place. But I'm a guy, listen, man, the way I'm wired, I love talking ball. I love talking predictions. I love talking key matchups. I love talking keys of the game. I love locking in picks. Like, that's how I'm wired. You know what I mean? All the rest of it is kind of, I don't want to say it's fluff because it's very important, but it's not why I do it. You know what I mean? It's not the sole reason why I do it. So cannot wait to get to game week, start talking UNC, breaking this thing down, guys. I cannot wait to get into the game week content, the way that game week content, because of the way we're distributing content, it's going to be so enhanced. We're going to have the opportunity to get to so many different things and touch on topics that maybe we didn't dive into all that much before. So going to be a lot of fun, guys. I'll also tell you guys this when it comes to the podcast. The way we are trending right now over the last week or so, it looks like the month of August could be our first ever 100,000 download month when it comes to the podcast, which would be an immense blessing, guys. I mean, absolutely incredible. By the way, speaking of the podcast, we are adding 2 new business partners. Exciting stuff here on this Monday going into the 2023 football season. One of them you will start to hear today. You'll hear both of these ads on the podcast. The first, Twisted Tea, which is a really fun one, but really cool as well. So you'll hear that ad read. And also an app called Game Time, where you can buy tickets for all of your games. You'll get $20 off when you use our promo code. That ad read will start next week on the podcast. So you'll hear Twisted Tea this week. Game Time will be next week. And those both will run through the end of the college football season. So really exciting stuff, guys. I mean, obviously adding business partners, you all know it's a great sign for the business. Things are going well. Business is healthy. And I tell you guys all the time, I try to not load the show up with ads or have too many breaks, but I feel like our audience understands, like, that's what keeps this thing moving. That's what keeps the lights on. That's what makes what we do possible. And it's you all, your love and support. That's why folks want to partner with us. So again, thank you all so much for the continued love and support. I cannot say thank you enough. It's really great stuff. And, it's a blessing to say year in and year out that I'm looking forward to our biggest and best football season upcoming. And I feel like that'll be the case every single year. Every next year is our best year. And it's because of you all, your love, your support. So again, thank you all so much. It looks like he's ready. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. He joins us every single Monday to talk all things Gamecocks, SEC, and everything in between. He joins us today. Mark Rogers. Mark, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time. Happy Monday to you, sir.
A lot going on, even though we have yet to kick off. Tons going on, trying to keep track of all of this realignment that, fortunately for you folks in the Palmetto State, at least on your half of the Palmetto State, I got to check myself there with Clemson possibly being in the turmoil at some point down the road. But for you South Carolina folks in the SEC, you are safe and secure and making good money.
Mark, and I hate to lump it all on you, but I got to ask, like, what in the heck's going on, man? Because I've been trying to follow and keep up with it as best I can. And I understand, Mark, this time of year, it's a very, we get to media days, and that's sort of when the conference realignment talk, it's like every year over the last couple of years, it reemerges itself. I've been doing my best to keep up with it, and I feel like I was doing a pretty good job up until the weekend. And dude, it's just so many different moving pieces, moving parts. I heard somebody say it's the transfer portal, but for entire schools and not just athletes, which I think is a really accurate depiction of it. What is the latest on especially the Pac-12? I've seen people saying that really they're the Pac-4 right now, but the Pac-12 saying they could partner up with maybe the Mountain West or, what Florida State wants to do, what Clemson wants to do. What's the latest you can tell us today of what's happening? Because admittedly, my friend, like I said, Mark, it feels like it's so much, it's honestly hard to keep up with at this point.
Tough to keep up with, but where we stand right now with the Pac-4 would be Stanford and Cal, I believe, especially Stanford, is in a position based on the academic standing of the school that's at the top of the list. And even the football can be good when they actually devote themselves to it, that I think that they have more options than everybody else. Washington State and Oregon State, especially Oregon State, considering all that they've done in recent years under Jonathan Smith, really in a tough situation. And I think a lot of college football fans feel for Oregon State because they're trying to build a program. They are building a program. They finished in the top 15 in the country. They're doing all the right things, but they're sandwiched up there in the Northwest, Corvallis, Oregon, don't bring a whole lot of TV eyeballs, but they've got a passionate fan base. They pack out their stadium. They love college football. They don't want to be left out. And they appear to be the best football brand in terms of the way you and I would rate a football brand, about passionate fans and winning games and trying to win, that could be left out of all of this. The Mountain West, it's strange that we looked at this a few days ago, as the Pac-12 possibly poaching and picking apart the Mountain West. Now the Mountain West can say, you know what? No, we're a conference. We're the stable conference. You have to join us if you want to survive in all this. I actually saw something from On3 just a few minutes ago that the American Conference might be diving all the way across country to grab some semblance of Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State, because look at the American Conference. They have prided themselves on being that sixth power conference. And of course, that's not even close to being reality with them losing their three best football brands. But if they could then replace them with four better football brands, that would be an argument one way or the other. Then maybe the American Conference solidifies itself as being, again, the best of the group of five and having most likely that place at the playoff table every year. But that's where we stand on one side of the country. And as you well know, Clemson's being lumped in with Florida State. Florida State's really taken the initiative of saying ACC's not good enough. You can't come through for us. We need money. We got to compete. Clemson's kind of been attached to that argument for obvious reasons. They're the best football brand in the conference. So that is more, I believe, a struggle because of the grant of rights. Not that it can't be accomplished, but I think that, that is more of an issue from a money standpoint, a legal standpoint for them to fight through. And I am not a legal expert to tell you whether it's something that can be accomplished or not. I hear dissenting views on both sides. But that's basically where we stand right now.
Mark, back to the West Coast, and I know we spoke on this, a little bit last week. Do you feel that not having, let's say, it looks like to me that the Pac-12, I don't know what the Mountain West is going to do, but it looks like they're about to be history. I mean, do you feel like not having a West Coast conference hurts college football?
Long term, I think it does. I actually just posted a short just a few minutes ago that basically said a lot of people are blaming ESPN and Fox. Yeah, they're at the root of this. They're at the heart of this, but don't blame them. They run businesses. People blame Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, who is now the Big Ten commissioner. Before that, of course, Kevin Warren, as waging this arms race and just obliterating the sport. Well, yes, you can blame them as well, but they're not paid to look out for the sport. They are paid to make money and build their respective conferences into superpowers, and they're doing that. Blame way back, if we want to go back a couple of decades, blame the NCAA because they had ownership of this sport. They ran the sport. Now they're a weak little organization. They are powerless. They can't do anything. But blame them long term because the money started to escalate in the 80s and 90s and beginning of the 2000s, and they just sat on their hands and chased around, football players that were cheating on tests and so forth. And we're not looking at big picture issues to protect the sport. So, yeah, I think for as much ridicule as the Pac conference has taken in recent years for bad football, for flag football, I've called it that a couple times, it's going to hurt the sport.
Going back to Florida State and Clemson, Mark, what do you think's the natural fit? If they were to get out, what do you think's the natural fit for them? Do you think it's the Big Ten? Do you think it's the SEC? Obviously, Sankey has said that, they're not interested in expanding right now, but I mean, for the right team, that can change. What do you think is a good fit for FSU and Clemson, say they were able to get out of that grant of rights that you speak of?
They're almost like SEC football programs anyway. I think the SEC is the fit for both of them. For football fans, for you and I, Chris, and for everybody watching, as football fans, they're a fit for the SEC. Just think about, obviously, the games that have been played. Clemson and Alabama have almost founded a rivalry just based on postseason play, championship games. And, of course, Florida State's got a long history against certain schools in the SEC, of course, Florida. And we could go through, of course, Clemson, South Carolina. And Clemson has reached out and scheduled those series in the past with Auburn and Texas A&M. And others. So, and of course, Georgia. So from a football standpoint, the SEC makes total sense. Now you start to throw in what the academia wants at those institutions in terms of being aligned with the Big Ten. They're going to make more money. I don't think that's of consequence. I don't think it's enough money. It's not like the Big Ten is the SEC could sign the next deal and surpass the Big Ten. We could be just, those two are obviously ruling the sport. So I think from a football standpoint, the SEC is the obvious choice. When there are other factors taken into consideration, money and mostly academic prestige, then you can make the argument for the Big Ten.
Mark, conference realignment, NIL, transfer portal, and maybe above all else, the NCAA's complete lack of competence. Are you worried about the future of the sport you love so dearly?
Yeah, there will be college football, but in what condition will it be? Like all these realignment moves, I think it's fascinating. I think it's interesting to think about Penn State traveling out to the Coliseum to play USC. And, we could go through the myriad of matchups. Texas now playing in, Death Valley on a regular basis, and Tuscaloosa. All those things are amazing in terms of matchups. But when you start to alienate what are not considered on a grand scale large fan bases, but when you put them all together, it's a pretty sizable audience. I've heard, anywhere from 15 to 20% of college football fans could be alienated because they're just kind of going to give up. Not that their program's going to cease to exist, but they're going to be playing for a spot in the Mountain West or somewhere where they didn't picture their program. And I just think it's a bad thing overall for the sport. I think it creates immediate interest in the soap opera, the saga, but long term, again, we've had this conversation, Chris, about the regionality of the sport and how it grew up, and what made it so unique was culture. There was something to a Big Ten team taking on an SEC team in postseason play. People talk different. They listen to different music. They eat different food. Their values might be a little bit different. And that's what made it interesting. All these conferences had identities. The Southwest Conference that was defunct 1995, that had a identity. And the SEC, of course, has a great identity, of course. That's well-founded. The Big Ten, an identity. And, when your conference goes from being a Midwest conference, the core of the country, the middle of the country there, and then you're stretched out to Rutgers, New York City, and Los Angeles, you've lost that fabric.
Mark, the preseason USA Today coaches poll released this morning. I'll go down the list. Georgia, Michigan, Bama, Ohio State, LSU is your top 5. Southern Cal, Penn State, FSU, Clemson, Tennessee round out the top 10. Then we go Washington, Texas, Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon, TCU, Kansas State, Oregon State, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Ole Miss, Tulane, Texas Tech, and Texas A&M. The Gamecocks will face 5 of those teams this year. South Carolina receiving 89 votes, officially at number 27 in the rankings. Your immediate reactions, where they got it right, where they got it wrong, your feelings on the USA Today coaches poll, the first one of the 2023 season.
Yeah, I've not looked at it. It sounds like Texas is about 12, 13, something in that range.
Texas is at 12, yes.
That sounds not necessarily that it's low, but it's lower than I anticipated because they've been getting a lot of buzz. If you looked at the Ohio State-Michigan dynamic, I can guarantee you that there's more fluctuation with Ohio State than with Michigan. People are pretty rock solid on where Michigan is, but Ohio State, more talented, but question marks and issues there. People continue to believe in Alabama, and I will as well, even though I do truly believe that quarterback is a concern until proven otherwise. And the nod goes to Florida State over Clemson. I'm just moderately, slightly surprised at that. The longer I stew on my predictions, the more I feel Clemson and believe in what they have always established and what they've got and what Garrett Riley is going to bring versus a Florida State team that's a chic pick for this season. So those are the things that stand out. Just to remind everyone, 13 of the preseason top 25 teams last year did not finish ranked. That's usually about 8 or 9. So pick 8 or 9 teams. They're not going to finish ranked.
That's incredible when you think about it. Of course, South Carolina's hoping they're one of those that does finish ranked, and indeed they did that last year. Mark, we're in the midst, of course, fall camp. These teams have hit the practice field. Everybody's got different sources, people they talk to, what have you. It's all fall camp rumblings. Anything interesting to this point for you that you've heard out of fall camp? Of course, we've got quarterback battles going on. We've got, of course, teams trying to avoid the dreaded I word, right? The injury bug, keep everybody healthy. But has anything stuck out to you? Again, I know you've got to kind of read between the lines, if you will, to find topics to discuss. But on the national landscape, anything interesting coming out of fall camp so far for you?
Yeah, I've been so locked into this realignment. I counted 33 live streaming hours of that just in the last few days. In terms of, and every time I run into someone that is a media person that covers that particular team on a daily basis, a beat writer. A lot of the shows that we do throughout the week are with beat writers that go out to practice 2, 3, 4 times per week. That's what I'm always hitting them up on, knowing, hey, it's only day 1, day 2, day 3. You probably don't have anything. And all is quiet. That's what I've gotten. Hey, give it a week to breathe. We'll find some things out. Hopefully nobody gets hurt, but somebody will. And that's gonna surface at some point. People will get hurt, and then of course all the quarterback battles, starting with Alabama. To me, the most intriguing of the quarterback battles, and the most important one, is in Tuscaloosa.
Mm-hmm. Mark, soon toe will meet leather. We got 26 days until South Carolina football, 19 days until college football returns. Week 0, of course, we're looking specifically at Vanderbilt and Hawaii as the SEC gets going. But, of course, there's other college football as well. And to your point, Mark, when the pads get on, pads start popping, I think that's when you're really going to start hearing some things out of fall camp, because thus far it's just been helmets, shorts, what have you. And you're not really able to learn anything or, any battles be won in those conditions. Last thing, Mark Rogers, the voice of college ball, before I get you out of here, Mark, most underrated storyline, in your opinion, out of the SEC East and SEC West going into this season?
SEC Eastern Division, I'm going to say that Florida is just a wide open wild card for me, and what they're going to do with Graham Mertz and how they're going to run an offense with Graham Mertz compared to what they did last year with Anthony Richardson. I think that they're in an intriguing place, just trying to figure out how they play up to that skill set and that lack of skill set in other areas. And really what's going on in Florida right now is they're coming off these two awful seasons, and the finish last year was deplorable, but then they lose what they lost, of course, at the quarterback position, replace him with a completely different player. But Billy Napier's knocking it out of the park right now in recruiting. So it's, for me, I'm interested just in Florida, if they can piece together some semblance of a decent season and help build that momentum, because it could come to a grinding halt if some of the forecasts out there, considering the schedule and the deficiencies on that team, come to fruition and they're like a 7-loss team. Maybe that recruiting comes to a halt in terms of the momentum that Billy has built up there. In the SEC Western Division, it's again, I gravitate to the wild cards, that the higher ceilings and lower floors, and the intrigue there. And that's all Texas A&M right there. Jimbo, Bobby Petrino. Is Jimbo going to be able to just let Bobby Petrino be Bobby Petrino? You hired him for only one reason. You didn't hire him to be the escort across campus for the young ladies or anything like that. He doesn't do anything well except run an offense. That's why you hired him. Leave him alone. Let him run the offense. You be the head coach, and maybe Texas A&M will be the dark horse that can break through.
Mark Rogers, the voice of college ball, joins us each and every single Monday. Mark, I appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Keep up the great work, and we'll do it again next week.
Good to see you, Chris.
Yeah, man. Always a pleasure. Great stuff with Mark Rogers, the voice of college ball. Y'all be sure to check him out on YouTube, social media, everywhere his content can be found. Really do appreciate him, and looking forward to conversating all season long. By the way, that reminds me, do not forget, of course, our TDC guest lineup is set. This will be the first week. Of course, we just had Mark Rogers, the voice of college ball, on. On Tuesdays, we have JC Sherbert, which will be a really fun conversation. Wednesday, the debut of Chris Marler, which will be a ton of fun, an absolute electric factory he is. Thursday, Mark Ryan. Friday, Jake Crane. You all know the drill. We are set to rock and roll as we go into the 2023 college football season. Guys, that being said, we're going to open it up to you all. I want to hear from you. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to peel back, a lot to get into here in this Q&A Power Hour. Your questions, your comments, your calls, and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge, where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle doggy ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, August the 7th, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. With that being said, our Q&A Power Hour officially gets underway. I want to hear from you, your questions, your comments, your calls, and more. Our good friend Chase in the Big Cock Club Discord says this, that we got to go back to the Richardson hats, the Richardson 112s. Luke RJ looks like agrees with him. I'll say this about the hats. So we are getting hats up, guys. It is very hard to find stock in the Richardson 112 trucker hats. And the trucker hats that you see me wear on the show more often than not, they are a foam trucker hat versus the Richardson 112, which, listen, I'm just speaking, my preference personally. I like the foam trucker hats more than the Richardson 112s, and it's not an issue of not wanting to have them. It's just what is available for stock. So starting out, it is going to be that foam trucker hat that we will be selling. We'll do our best to get Richardson 112s, but again, the stock on those, it is very tough to get those in stock. Either way, guys, I want to hear from you, 843-790-3377, after all the events that took place over the weekend. Jonathan Paylor to NC State, Jalewis Solomon to Auburn, and, of course, Landon Duckworth, 2026 quarterback. He does commit to the Gamecocks, but a very, very eventful last couple of days in Gamecock Nation. Again, would love to hear your thoughts. And as I mentioned previously, I know you guys are just like me. You know, Big Game Boomer says this, actually, right on cue, just tweeted this about a minute ago. He says, we're less than 3 weeks away from the start of college football, and this conference realignment crap has ruined all the momentum we were building up to. Thank you, Fox and ESPN, for nothing. I mean, I'll say this. It's one of those things you have to talk about. But, yeah, sitting 19 days away from the start of college football season, you just kind of feel like, man, like, I don't know. This is one of those things that it's exhausting. I mean, really, really, truly, the conference realignment stuff, the NIL stuff, the portal, whatever it is, the off-field stuff, it's exhausting. It's exhausting, flat out. Fulbright Jason says, Solomon went for the money. Fulbright Jason, no shit. I think that's pretty clear. We all know that. Welcome to the new age of college football. Let's get back into your questions earlier in the show. James Kendall says, all my homies hate getting outbid on NIL. Good way to put it, James. Good way to put it. Brian Dean, no more Pac-12. Chris, do you think we're going to have 3 power conferences? I definitely think, Brian, we are on our way for that, yes. Hunter Kelly, I'm not excited for tonight the way we played last night. LOL. Yeah, the season simulation series, I was stunned. And you know what's crazy? That simulation last night, a simulation, by the way, in which Spencer Rattler threw 7 interceptions. Okay? 7 interceptions. Like, I don't even think the play calling was that bad. I just think Spencer Rattler and the offense played like crap. Like, there were some good plays called. There were multiple shots missed down the field. I don't think you can blame the play calling fully for that loss. I'm just saying. Brian Dean, it felt like a victorious weekend if you're a Gamecocks basketball fan. They went to the Bahamas and dominated. Last game was 107-46, shot 43% from 3 in 2 games. They made 33 3-pointers. Brian, I hear you. And I'm a Gamecocks basketball fan. But you know as well as I do, Brian, nobody at this time of year gives a damn about basketball. And that's just the facts. Is what it is, my man. Is what it is. Let's see. DGD. What's going on, man? Appreciate you. Appreciate tuning in, DGD. What's up? What's up? Let's see. Travi, what's going on? Good to see you. Ethan K., which SEC team would you trade for any other team in the country? I would trade Mizzou for North Carolina. That's not a bad trade. I'll go with that. Mizzou for UNC. Braddock says, don't think it's a hot take. Fisher's on the hot seat. Yeah, for sure. Brandon Marcello, of course, talking about that. A lot of pressure on Jimbo Fisher this year. There's no question. Jeff Gullidge, Big 12 will rebrand soon and become a new conference to separate themselves from the Big 10. Very well could happen. Humbucker75 says, Chris, I really enjoyed hearing you and Jake Crane talk it out lately. Good stuff. Thank you, Humbucker. Yep, we'll have him on every single Friday. Always a fantastic conversation with my guy, Jake Crane. Let's see. Keeping it going. Spur Daddy is in the house. What's up, man? Spur Daddy says, I guess we didn't get Paylor or Solomon because we gave all the NIL money to Dylan Stewart last week. I don't know, man. I will say this, though, Spur Daddy. I saw some really... I'll just say this. Gamecock Twitter and the usual suspects of it, Gamecock Twitter was a mess. I mean, it was a mess. That's what I'm saying. You would have thought South Carolina lost on, like, Dylan Stewart or a Nicholas Harbor, like the gem of the 2024 signing class. Instead, it's Jalewis Solomon, who is a good player. I mean, I think he's a good player, but, like, the reaction was wild from the Garnet Trust doing what they did to, you know, kids exposing, recruits DMs for, I made them a graphic, they didn't use it, they didn't commit, how dare they? Like that side of it to just the normal Twitter craziness. Dude, it was all over the place. It was all over the place. I thought it was wild. I mean, because I just took it as this. I mean, it sucks to lose the guy, but bro, I mean, this is NIL. Like this is recruiting. Guys have changed their minds at the last second. Like, and what's funny is, and I'll say this because I'm not calling anybody out directly, but you hear people say all the time, don't tweet at recruits. Don't tweet at recruits. Don't tweet at recruits. But there were a lot of people in this fan base that spent the last 48 hours or so, including, by the way, the Garnet Trust, who's a collective, the official collective of USC, spent the last 48 hours subtweeting a recruit. And I'm just like sitting there in amazement of what went down. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. You missed out on a 4-star prospect. Like, who cares? It's NIL. You think Carolina hasn't benefited from NIL? It's the nature of the beast. And I understand. And I've told you guys this, right? Like, because here's the funny part. I've told you guys, like, I don't understand paying a high school kid $1 million to come to your school. That's crazy. It's crazy. So, South Carolina, and what's funny is I saw people saying that, oh, it's illegal to use NIL in recruiting. That's not a thing. Yes, it is, dude. Do you actually think that these schools aren't recruiting these players and they've got like an NIL package set up? They're presenting the best possible NIL package they can put together. So you can tell yourself whatever story you want that, NIL's for the players that are here, not the players recruiting. Bro, bullshit. NIL is for recruiting just as much as facilities, just as much as coaching staff, just as much as culture fit. NIL is getting used in recruiting. To convince yourself otherwise is a foolish thing to do. But South Carolina had a deal in place, ready to go, and Auburn one-upped it. And if South Carolina didn't feel like they wanted to respond and add more, then that's fine. It's like being at the negotiating table. And if the kid wants to take more, then so be it. I mean, it is what it is. He should do what's best for him, and South Carolina shouldn't make a bad business deal trying to chase a kid like that down. But you got to remove, I tell you this, you got to remove the feelings out of recruiting, man. You just have to. You have to. You got to remove the personal feelings. It's gotten to a point now, guys, it's nothing personal. It's business. Recruiting's business. There's an exchanging of funds. There's a contract. There's a negotiation. This is business, right? Nobody takes it personal when an NFL guy holds out and weighs his options and signs the best deal. Nobody bats an eye. That's happening in college sports now. That's happening in college football. And you got to take the emotion out of it or you're going to get burned time and time and time again. Because here's the reality. South Carolina's benefited from a lot too. They've been the beneficiary of it a ton. Do you think everybody that signs in every signing class comes to Carolina just because they fall in love with the culture and want to be a Gamecock? No. Hell no. I mean, ideally, you have guys that fit both the culture fit and they love Beamer and also NIL is a lucrative opportunity that makes sense. But not everybody's like that, man. Not everybody's like that. NIL's worked for Carolina as well. But again, you have to take the fandom out of it. That's where the Garnet Trust messed up. Like, bro, switch to your burner account. Say what you want to say at your burner account. You represent an entity that is constructed to pay student athletes, to give them the most lucrative NIL opportunities you possibly can, going up against other schools. You cannot sit there and then say, well, if money's their focus, then, they're not a good fit for us anyways. You can think that. Joe Blow on Twitter can say it. Heck, I could say it. But the official NIL collective can't say it. You just can't say it. You don't represent a person. You don't represent a Gamecock fan. You represent a business, an entity. And there's certain things you can and cannot do. There's certain things you should and should not say when you represent an entity. Just a wild, wild sequence of events. I mean, wild this weekend. But so again, I didn't understand the emotional backlash of it all. Like, okay, 4-star kid chose Auburn. So what? Who cares? The guy wasn't even, he wasn't a quote-unquote cock lock till about a week ago. This isn't a guy that's South Carolina's led for months, and then all of a sudden they land. Like, I just thought the reaction to it did not fit the event that took place. I thought the reaction far outweighed the event that took place. That's just me. That's just me. Let's see. We're going to get into your questions. Guys, again, you're welcome to call in 843-790-3377. Let's see. Spur Daddy said it just goes to show not to trust the 100% prediction on 24/7 sports recruiting. They had Stewart 100% to Ohio State, and he winds up a Gamecock. I mean, yeah, you never know in recruiting. You never know. You flat out never know. You flat out never know. And Chase Floyd, you know that I was right on the over on Spencer Rattler last year. You were almost right. The last couple of games saved us, but the over hit nonetheless. Austin Gregory, promo code TSUS on Prize Picks. Indeed, prizepicks.com, or go download the app. Promo code TSUS, 100% deposit match under $100. We're going to have a lot of fun on Prize Picks this year. A lot of fun. Jeff Gullett says, when it comes to commitments, I understand people getting upset because it's hard not to take it personally because it makes us feel we aren't good enough. But I never count a commitment until they are at practice. Yeah. Dude, especially now, again, where NIL's a thing, and like, guys, you got a few that are doing it, but most guys ain't coming to Carolina, or they're not going to any school because they grew up a fan of the team. They're just not doing it. Like, if I'm a 5-star prospect, even a 4-star, 5-star prospect, though, I got a high-level skill set. I got high-level value. Let the bidding begin. Let the bidding begin, man. I mean, I guess it depends on the player, but I nearly want to say I like coaches' relationships and facilities and like those things have never mattered less. I mean, really, truly. And that's the sad reality of it. They've never mattered less. South Carolina had a great relationship with Jonathan Paylor. Didn't give a damn. Went to NC State. I'd assume they had a great relationship with Jalewis Solomon. The way he was talking about South Carolina on his Twitter, on his social media, did not matter. When you got other parties involved, like families and people that are in their ears, and because I mean, listen, if put yourself in their shoes, right? You're the father, you're the mother, you're whoever, and the kid's going to be like, well, the culture. They're going to be like, screw the culture fit, get the bag while you can, because there's no guarantee you're going to be an NFL guy 3 years from now, 4 years. Get the money while you can. And that's just where we are. And I mean, it's that can make you like college ball more. It can make you like college ball less. And again, if you're convincing yourself that it's not being used in recruiting, you're just out of your mind. You're out of your mind. I mean, flat out. I don't care what some screenshot says or the rules say. It's happening, man. It's flat out happening. Let's see. All right, let's get into your current. I was going back through the questions here. Spur Daddy says, thank God I stay away from Twitter and Facebook. I don't need that trash, and most of the time, that's what those social media platforms attract. Spur Daddy, you make a good point. I will say, though, like it's fun to follow along. It is good for sports, fun to follow along. Chase Floyd says, never forget 13th out of 14 in NIL. Spur Daddy, the worst of that is the official NIL of the athletic department is calling out recruits. Tanner should be on the horn and cancel that partnership altogether right now. I won't go that far, Spur Daddy, because I look at it this way as well, with grace, with empathy, in the sense of, you know what? They sent a bad tweet. They emotionally tweeted. And it's probably one of those scenarios, whoever, and I got a good idea who runs the Garnet Trust, probably over there at the bourbon event over the weekend, probably at the Gamecock bourbon event that our friends at Carolina Cigars went to, probably sipping a little too much bourbon, doing a little bit too much tasting and tweeting and drinking, never a good mix. And so they fired that off. And I mean, yeah, I will say Spur Daddy, like I'm not saying they should be burned to the ground or the person who sent that tweet should be fired. I mean, I think that's very, very far, but you just got to know better. You just got to know better and you got to do better. And you got to realize that you may not like it because that's the thing. I don't want to say that's the problem, but the Garnet Trust and, they're made to compensate athletes, but it's a business. I mean, it's a business bottom line. It's a business end of the day. And, it's being run though by fans. And like, you cannot take things personally. When in the business side, you can't take things personally. You can't take things personally in the business of recruiting, the business of NIL. And you certainly can't voice that on Twitter. You cannot do that. The people that, are there, and there's not a lot of pushback, believe it or not, but the people that are pushing back on it, like, what's wrong with what they said? They're just Gamecock fans. They're going to defend any Gamecock entity that says anything, right? They just are, except for TSUS, which is kind of ironic. Either way, though, they're going to defend, but you got to realize, again, right message, wrong messenger. That's the best way to describe it. Right message, wrong messenger. It doesn't matter whether you or I or anybody else agrees with the sentiment that the Garnet Trust put out there. You cannot do that. You can't do it. You're subtweeting a recruit. Like, what are you doing? It looks like sour grapes that, well, we don't have the money to compete. They threw a bigger bag than us. Boo-hoo. And the other thing is you're complaining about doing the very thing you exist to do, which is compensate athletes. Present a lucrative NIL opportunity for them to come to the University of South Carolina. Do you complain when South Carolina benefits from it and gets players to come to Columbia because of NIL? Is anybody complaining that Spencer Rattler's the starting quarterback? Is anybody complaining that Juice Wells is still on South Carolina's roster? Is anybody complaining that Nicholas Harbor signed his letter of intent to be on South Carolina's roster? I don't think so. It's a double-edged sword, man. It's just a double-edged sword. I'm not telling you it's the greatest thing ever and that I don't at times hate it and it sucks, but it's the reality. It's just the reality, man. Gavin says, do I agree with what they said? Yes, but you're right. Should have done that one on the burner account. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. It goes without saying, man. Fulbright Jason, the NIL thing is just honestly sickening. Players shouldn't be paid until they're proven. Some people are giving away money that won't pan out. Some players are going to flop. Fulbright Jason, you are very correct. Some guys are going to be flops, but you know what? These schools are willing to take that chance. They're willing to take that chance. I mean, it'd be like back in the day, me telling you, well, should we really give Jadeveon Clowney $1 million? Should we really give, hell, guys, should we really give Spencer Rattler $1 million? Should we give it to Nicholas Harbor? Should we give it to Dylan Stewart? I mean, they're all risks. But it's the name of the game. It's the nature of the beast. And if you don't want to embrace NIL, fine, but you're going to end up recruiting like Vanderbilt. You can kiss top 25 classes goodbye. Because everybody else is getting on board with it. And like I told you guys, I don't enjoy sitting here just talking about NIL. Like, I want to talk football. We're going to talk football. I'm excited. Tomorrow, we'll get back into our position unit preview series. We'll talk offensive line. Then we'll move into defensive line. We're going to get back to the football chatter. But this is a topic of conversation. This is a reality in college football now. Lynn Turner says there's a group of kids that want to go where they want to go, period. And there's a group of kids that want to maximize profit. And there was a group of kids only looking at money. I mean, Lynn, listen, those players, you are right. You are right. You are right. Lynn Turner is also a group of kids that are their own brand and will get NIL outside of school efforts. Yeah. Cody says the new reality now is that there will be a lot more kids that stay in school because a lot of them will be making more money in college than they will in the NFL. And also, they'll be making way more money in college than they'll make at a real job if they're not going to go pro. Jeff Gullidge says, I wonder if the Garnet Trust flat out asked him what amount he wanted to make sure he's a Gamecock, and he said that number. They worked so hard to get that number. And he still didn't sign. Jeff, either way, it doesn't excuse the tweet and just how bad it looks and how silly it was, how dumb it was. And again, I tell you this, nothing of what I'm saying, I'm not telling you to go not join the Garnet Trust. And it's a fine entity. They're doing their very best to support Gamecock student athletes. They missed the mark greatly on that tweet, though. Just missed the mark greatly. So, let's see. DGD, trust the coming staff, evals, and development. You have to. Yeah. You have to. Evan Lusk, how much NIL would it take for Spencer to stay for the 6th and last COVID year to see him play against OU in Norman again? I have no idea, Evan. I mean, I think obviously NIL is very lucrative, but he's made enough to the point where I'm sure he's ready to take the jump and go to the next level and play at the NFL. I could be totally wrong. You never know, but yeah. So anyway, so the Big Cock Club Discord we go. Rowdy Rooster 75 says, man, it seems like Chris doesn't even look at this chat anymore during the shows. You're too good for us now, only talking to the YouTube crowd. Rowdy Rooster, I just knew y'all hadn't said anything, man. You commented 3 minutes ago. So everything else is about y'all talking about Chuck E. Cheese. Like, what do you want me to read from that? There's nothing to talk about from there. I'll say this as well. How much money would it take? How much NIL money would it take for Spencer Rattler to stay for a 6th year? Evan, if Spencer Rattler's to a point where he's not a 2nd or 3rd round NFL draft pick and he wants to come back and get NIL, South Carolina shouldn't give him a penny. They should move on and get another quarterback, because at that point it's like, all right, I'm very confused about the Chuck E. Cheese stuff. I'm very confused. Yeah. Wild day. Anyways, 843-790-3377. Rowdy Rooster, I'm just giving you hell, man. Let's see. Juice Wells on the Bolitnikoff Award watch list. Not a surprise there at all. Guys, we will have some coaches, I believe. I think coaches speak tomorrow out of South Carolina fall camp. Should be, as Mark was saying, this week. Pads are going on. Probably get more intel out of fall camp. So, which would be nice, which would be very nice. And like I mentioned, we'll get back into talking more on the field football tomorrow as we get into our position unit preview series. Breaking down everything. Offensive line over the next 2 days. Going to be a lot of fun. So, anyways, I didn't really want to spend a ton of time. I thought maybe if you guys want to call in, you want to discuss it, bring it up, whatever. But the stuff over the weekend, man, it was crazy. I mean, it was flat out crazy. Wow, how about this? A fight broke out. A fight broke out at LSU's practice during 11-on-11. Punches thrown, guys taken to the ground, multiple people involved. Malik Neighbors and Kyron Lacey got sent to the locker room. Harold Perkins didn't play another snap. Brian Kelly was not happy. Somebody quote tweets. Okay, I think this is trolling. So, a couple sources are telling me Brian Kelly's likely to take action by suspending everyone involved for the Tigers' Week 2 matchup against Grambling State. Yeah. Hey, listen, just good old fall camp, man. People throwing punches. I wouldn't mind if we threw a couple punches at our fall camp. Hey, show some competitiveness. Show some fight. Show some spunk. Show a spark. Why not? Chase Floyd, chat, join the BCC Discord so you can get on the Chuck E. Cheese combo. Patreon.com/Big Cock Club. You can also click the link in our bio and click the Big Cock Club link there And I will say, guys, join today for sure. It's going to be the biggest and best season in the Big Cock Club Discord. We'll be watching games, not just South Carolina, but SEC, college football as a whole. I will be involved in the Discord on game days more than I have ever been. It is going to be a blast. Looking forward to it. So let's see. Rowdy Rooster says, Chris, what's the position unit outside of quarterback you're most excited for? I mean, I think it's got to be wide receiver. Juice Wells, seeing if Xavier Legette can step up, Nicholas Harbor, Amarian Brown, Omega Blake, Eddie Lewis coming from Memphis. I mean, there's a lot of talent in that room. A lot of talent. Tons of talent in that wide receiver room. So I'd probably say receiver on the offensive side. Defense, I'll go secondary. When you have a pair of safeties like Eamon Warrior and DQ Smith leading the way, that's a good place to start. Really, really good place to start. So, anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. In case you missed it, the USA Today preseason coaches poll came out earlier today. South Carolina receiving 89 votes just on the outside looking in. Number 27 overall. So, Gamecocks will play 5 in the top 25, the preseason top 25. See if I can remember it. Georgia at number 1. I'd have to look. I don't remember it. I think it's Clemson 8, Tennessee 9. And you got UNC 20 and Texas A&M at 25. I believe that's it. So, AP Spur Daddy comes out, I believe, August the 14th, next Monday. Next Monday, I believe. Rowdy Rooster, tune in tonight, watch the NCAA stream. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. 7 o'clock, we take on Texas A&M. Let's see. Brian Dean, the key for me is both lines of scrimmage. If we dominate, we will win 9 or 10 games. Brian Dean, from your lips to God's ears, my friend, that South Carolina could win 9 or 10 games this season. Let's see. Okay, getting back into your questions. Austin Gregory, mental health crisis over a graphic, LOL. Spur Daddy, Gamecock Twitter or X is a hot mess. DGD says NCAA ain't going to do shit about it either. It's true. Not going to do anything. Austin Gregory says, if the scumbag bottom tier in our fan base doesn't stop freaking out on these kids when they choose another school, flips and future portal grabs will be non-existent. No need to bash the kids. Yeah, and I'll say this, Austin. You know, I didn't comment on it on social media, but I did see the tweet in question, of course, regarding the, when the Jalewis Solomon news came out, and a Twitter account out there, reached out to Jalewis Solomon. So, reached out to him first, said, hey, let me make you a commitment graphic. I'd love to make you a graphic, whatever. He said, all right, bet, I'll let you know. Week later, I don't know how long, he hits him up. Hey, man, make that graphic, whatever. Kid makes him the graphic, free of charge. Just offer to make it for him. Jalewis Solomon goes to Auburn. To then turn around and put a kid's DMs on blast. And again, it's just some random dude, some smaller account. And I respect it. I respect the hustle, respect the grind. You'll be lucky if you ever make another commitment graphic for a guy ever again. You'll be lucky. That is... It's absurd. I mean, it's just flat out absurd, man. It's absurd. It's absurd. Like, the kid did what was best for him. He committed to a different school. You made him a graphic for free. To expose the DMs and do everything you can to put the kid on blast. I mean, and Jonathan Paylor's DMs, by the way. 2 players you put on, like, to be exposing or trying to expose people via their DMs, though, just trash. It's just trash, man. There's no place for it. You got to get thicker skin. You got to, if you're going to actually make a business out of it and be a contributor, can't operate that way. Cannot operate that way. I just, absurd. So I don't have much more on it than that, man. I just thought that was crazy. I thought that was crazy. There's no need for it. Again, if you're looking out for yourself, you definitely don't want to do that because future prospects are going to look and be like, well, I mean, if I change my mind last minute, he's going to try to put me on blast on social media. So no thanks. I'm good. Whatever. Anyways, and I wish the kid with the best, but it's got to be a learning lesson. Got to be a learning lesson for you. Let's see. Yeah, Fulbright Jason. Can't wait to see the linebacker corps this year. Think they're going to be lights out. I think they're going to be very improved, Fulbright. We will get there next week. So we're actually going to wrap up, believe it or not, guys, we are going to wrap up the position unit preview series next week. We're going to talk linebackers, secondary, and kickers and punters. This week, we'll talk O-line and D-line, both lines of scrimmage. I'm excited for the linebackers. You'll hear, again, the full thoughts on it next week, but we're going to wrap up that position unit preview series next week by end of next week because, of course, the following week, the week of week 0, we will be off that entire week, taking a trip to Montana, going to see family. Of course, the podcast will run as normal. We got a lot of exciting interviews for you guys to hear. But in regards to the Daily Crow, there will be a week hiatus that'll serve sort of our last big trip, last big getaway, if you will. And then we'll be back getting into it that Monday as we dive into week 1, South Carolina, North Carolina. Going to be an absolute blast. Brian Dean, Chris, did we pick up a kid from UAB? We did not. No, that kid I saw, he entered the portal. We did not pick him up, though. Driftwood, many people should apply the 24-hour rule. Yes, Driftwood, I 110% agree. Because you find after 24 hours, you're just not nearly as upset as you were when the initial action took place. You know what I mean? So, anyways, GA, where's that guy from Anderson that said we were going 10-2 last year? Don't remember his name. You're talking about J. Ray Reynolds. Jay Reynolds. GA. Would you believe me if I told you that he has gone on record on Twitter yet again with his predictions? Would you believe me if I told you he has picked 10-2 yet again? He's picked 10-2 yet again with a win over Georgia. And so that's the thing. That's the thing I'll say is like, if you can really sit down and explain to me why Carolina is going to go 9-3 or 10-2 or 11-1, God bless you. And I'm more than happy to hear you out. But your predictions lose a lot of luster if, Jay Ray, for example, sure, he's a great dude. He's a great Gamecock. But he's obviously a guy who's just going to pick 10-2 every single year, like no matter what, no matter the circumstance. And it's like your predictions hold no weight at that point to me, like because you're going to pick 10-2 no matter what. And so the one year that South Carolina actually has the team to go 10-2, I mean, sure, you'll hit it then, but like in the meantime, you're just an overly optimistic Garnet Glasses Gamecock fan. Bottom line. You are. So, yeah. Rowdy Rooster 75, can you explain the differences between Carolina Rise and Garnet Trust? That's a great question, Rowdy Rooster, for JC. I would say this. The differences, they're two separate entities. I don't think Garnet Trust is run by Gamecock Central anymore. Jeremy Smith is the name of the fellow who runs Garnet Trust. They do a lot of stuff with Gamecock Central. They do different things in regards to events, player partnerships. And then Carolina Rise is run by J.C. Sherbert, those folks at the Big Spur. And they do different things in regards to events, stuff like that. So either way, bottom line is this. They're two separate entities. JC can give you a lot more in-depth on the differences, but yeah. There you go. So, anyways, guys, hey, we're going to jump into a quick break on the other side. We're going to keep the conversation rolling here on this Monday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, August the 7th, 2023. Again, I hope each and every single one of you had a fantastic weekend. We're taking your questions, your comments, your calls as well here on this Monday. Spur Daddy says we go 8-4, 4-4 in the SEC. I could very well see it. Brian Dean says, I say with certainty that 9 or 10 wins is possible depending on the plays on both lines of scrimmage. Brian, I tell you this. I'm contrary to Brendan M's belief in the Big Cock Club Discord, I'm not a killer of positivity. That's not what I do. I feel like I had this exact same rant last year, this time. I'm not a killer of positivity, but what I do kill is delusion. And I'm sorry, but going 10-2 with this roster, with these question marks, I hope it happens. I'm hopeful, but to expect it, delusion. Just straight up delusion. So, just my take, just my opinion. Let's see. But hey, if the O-line and D-line are elite, well, then all of a sudden we have a different conversation. But that is a humongous if. Humongous if. Anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Monday. The Garnet Trust is still getting cooked on Twitter for the tweet they threw out there. Gamecock NIL tweeting out. University of South Carolina NIL tweeting out. South Carolina Athletics, I guess officially today, Garnet Trust times USC Athletics, Rice Athletic Center. Today they are finalizing that, what have you. And the replies are as you would expect. Anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. The Garnet bust. Cody, not a big fan of the 2023 Under Armour sideline polo for the season. I have not seen those. What do they look like? I don't know. They normally, I don't know, man. I'm not a huge fan of them either. Austin Gregory, South Carolina's defense will be ranked blank by season's end. I think it could be a top 50 defense. I think that's possible. Hard to pinpoint exactly where, but I think it could be a top 50 defense. Lynn Turner says, I think the school made a mistake putting their official stamp on a single NIL org. Run by people who are not employees of the AD because they don't control what the org says or does. Is that fair? I mean, sure. Sure. Frank says, a collective mad at another collective for doing exactly what they are trying to do. Yeah. I mean, Frank, listen, I'll just say this. And I'm not going to go on the rant I went in before, about the division at USC and stuff like that. It's, I just, you can say what you want that the two collectives aren't going up against each other, but they are. They are, man. It's a competition. It's one versus the other, and when it shouldn't be, when it really shouldn't be, both entities, both sides fighting to do the same thing. But when you've got different ideas, different ideologies of how to get to that end result, that's where you see the division. So I don't know, man. It's a wild landscape, that's for sure. It's a wild landscape. Hey, good news on the merchandise side of business. Good news. Tumbler orders will be shipping out tomorrow. So everybody who's ordered a tumbler, who's been waiting, those will be getting delivered, or shipping out tomorrow. You should have those by end of week. Really, really exciting stuff. The Beamer Ball tumblers that are now on sale at tsus.store. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Peyton.
Peyton, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good. How about yourself, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. What's going on?
Not much. I know. Let's see. When did I call in last? Tuesday or something like that? I told you I'd call in the next day, but a bunch of shit came up, man. And
You're
I
good,
went
my
to the
man.
beach. I was in Myrtle Beach this past weekend. Had a great time down there, and I was hit with that tweet like a ton of bricks, man. Who in the blue hell told them that was all right to tweet? I don't know. That sends such a bad message to every other recruit in the country that's thinking about coming to South Carolina. Because the last thing that we need is recruits thinking, well, if I don't go there, or if I choose some other place because of NIL, then I'll have Garnet Trust talking shit about me on Twitter. That's the last thing that we need to put out right now. And especially we're in such a crucial point in recruiting to come out and say something like that. It's very tone deaf, and it's very situationally unsound. Totally. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks, man. I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it wasn't a great look. It wasn't. I mean, there's just no excuse for it, man, when you're in that position and you're the official NIL partner with a university. And, it's the irony of the fact, the irony that tweet and them being the official NIL partner happens within a week or two of each other, week and a half, something like that. Wasn't that long.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm going to tell you this. I will never urge anyone away from, if you want to go join Garnet Trust, give your money, awesome. You want to go join Carolina Rise, awesome. Like if you want to give back to USC, awesome. You should do that. You should do that. But these are fans running these collectives, you know what I mean? Fans of the university. And I think that tweet was just emotional. It was just an emotionally, but when you are in charge of an entity such as that, you cannot react emotionally. You cannot do so.
Right.
So I think it was sour grapes after the Solomon thing. And I mean, that was the point I was making before, man, is it was just the reaction to the Jalewis Solomon commitment was just wild to me. Like how much that the outrage that caused. It was very shocking, but yeah, it was, listen, man, the tweet in question was just, it was poor. It was just a poor tweet, and shouldn't say it. And your sole goal and initiative and job is to present lucrative NIL deals. And listen, every other collective's doing the same thing. And if you get beat out, so be it. Tip your cap. Business is business, and keep it moving. What they said was outrageous. It was ridiculous. And I mean, the tweet's been deleted, but the damage has been done. And I'm sure Shane Beamer's overcome, since he took over the head coaching job, and I'm sure he'll find a way to overcome this, but just a very foolish thing that they said.
Yeah. And so two things to add on to that. You say that it's a collective ran by fans. And I understand that, but when you attach yourself to a university like that, you become part of the university. And you got to leave the banter to the fans, man. You got to leave the banter to you and I, to all the people that tune into the show and all the other Gamecock fans across the country. You got to leave that up to them, because 9 times out of 10, I have 100% faith that message would have been tweeted out by some Gamecock fan along the way, but it did not have to be the NIL partnership with the university. That's such a bad look. And let's see, I think I already forgot the other thing. But it's just, you got to leave that up to the fans, man. You gotta leave. You know, you always say the beauty's in the banter, but you don't hear Shane Beamer engaging in the banter. I mean, you don't hear the president of the school engaging in the banter. So, I mean, you really shouldn't hear the official NIL partnership of South Carolina engage in this banter like this. And it's, like I said earlier, man, it's all the other recruits out there that are on the fence that the only other thing that they're looking for is a better NIL deal, and that's what it comes down to for some kids. You don't want to push those kids away. I mean, you don't want to potentially give them a bad taste in their mouth, because there's no telling how many other recruits that this kid knew that maybe thought about going to Carolina, or maybe didn't think about going to Carolina. There's such a slippery slope when you start saying shit like that, and you run a risk of turning away a lot of recruits. But thankfully, Dylan Stewart already said, "I'm done. It's over. I'm not talking to any more teams." But we just, man, what a tone deaf tweet. What a tone deaf tweet.
Yeah, it was tough. And to your point, Peyton, about the beauties in the banter, and you can't have the banter when you're affiliated with you. That's why I would never in any way, shape, or form, seek out being affiliated with USC. That's why I love being independent, because I do love the banter and I love partaking in the banter, within reason, obviously. So, but to your point, now you're absolutely right. I mean, it's you're much more than a fan or you should not and cannot say the things that the common fan says anymore, because you represent, like, to your point, you're officially partnered up with the University of South Carolina. Austin Gregory, also here in the chat, makes a good point, kind of in line with what you're saying. Peyton, he says, what bothers me the most about the Garnet Trust tweet is that they were essentially speaking for the coaching staff by saying they don't want players whose sole interest it is in NIL. Perhaps true, but not their place to say. And that's to your point, that comes by default, because, okay, they're going to look at it as this is the official NIL collective of South Carolina, so this must be the way Shane Beamer feels, which is obviously inaccurate. Or if it is accurate, leave it for him to say. Like, you don't need to be the one saying it. So, yeah, I get what you're saying 110%.
But, to talk about, this tweet comes from a place of morality, right? I mean, for the true Gamecock, money shouldn't be an issue, or they should want to come to the university regardless of money and this and this. That's an old world way of thinking about stuff. And all morality went out the window when all of this was put into effect. All of it became about money then, right then, and that's the bag has been opened and you can't close it anymore. So morality went out the window a long time ago, and just it's not the place for it now. It's too late, too little, too late. Nobody wants to hear it anymore. So and Beamer's done a great job so far of adapting to this new style of recruiting. He's done a hell of a job, but you can't be fighting an uphill battle. I mean, you can't be having the people that you're working directly with potentially deterring these recruits that you're trying to land. That's so counterintuitive, man. And it's almost like we're stepping over dollars to get the dimes. Like, right. Yes, it sucks that we've lost a 4-star recruit. Yes, it's bad news, but you move on, man. You move on to the next guy. You move on to the next 4-star. Better yet, you move on to the next 5-star. You move on, man. It's before, like you said earlier. I mean, before money was even involved in this, recruiting was very, very unpredictable. I mean, ask Clemson about Clowney, how unpredictable recruiting can be. I mean, you never really know until their name's on the dotted line and they got the helmet on and they're out there practicing. But now that money's involved, you got a whole nother element added to it, and you can't be fighting. You can't be trying to sell your program to these recruits and then turn around and have the NIL people just saying what they say. I don't think it's a good look, man.
Hmm.
I don't think we can't continue to have shit like this come out. This has got to be a one and done thing. I mean, if these personal tweets keep coming out of this NIL collective, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that'll be the last one. I'd be pretty stunned if it ain't. So we'll see. But yeah. So.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll go ahead and get off here, man. Let other people get a chance to talk to you, buddy. Love calling in, man. It's been a while since I talked to you. I will actually call in tomorrow, and I will 100% do that instead of just saying it like I did last week. But anyway, go Spurs Up show, man. Thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate it, Chris. Go Cox.
Peyton, you're the man. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Go Cox. Really, really good stuff from Peyton. That was great conversation, great banter, and I think he hit the nail on the head on a lot of different things. Jacob E. says, NIL is tough, but you can't blame the kids for taking opportunities to make more money than they've ever seen. Majority of these kids won't see a pro contract, so they got to get it while they can. Absolutely. And Jacob E., I'll say this on the whole, again, I would not urge anyone to not support either collective. Of course, our relationship with J.C. Sherbert, Carolina Rise, without a doubt, man, they're doing great things. With the Garnet Trust doing great things, supporting Gamecocks athletes, have at it. But I've always spoken freely on my platform, the airwaves, what have you. I mean, you go back a couple of weeks to talking about the relationship between USC and TSUS, and maybe there are things that maybe make some folks uncomfortable to bring to light, but it is what it is, and it's no big deal. And if you live truly and honestly and genuinely, you don't have to apologize for anything because it's just the truth. So without giving too much detail, I would just say this. I would urge folks to support the Garnet Trust because it supports Gamecocks athletes, student athletes specifically. But I'm not surprised that the Garnet Trust found themselves in this position because I know who runs and operates the Garnet Trust. I know who does business with the Garnet Trust. I know who puts on events with the Garnet Trust. I know who is the head of the Garnet Trust. And the way they've been rude to me over the last year plus in DMs, saying things unsolicited, I'll be honest with you, man. I didn't feel all that bad watching them get dragged on Twitter. I really didn't. It didn't bother me. I didn't shed a tear. It didn't bother me. So again, that's not to tell you not to support the Garnet Trust. It didn't shock me. It didn't shock me that they would say something that was dumb. I just flat out. So it is what it is, man. I mean, it wasn't all that surprising, to be honest with you. It really wasn't when I stopped and thought about it. So, yeah, it is what it is. So, anyways, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Cox by One says Park Avenue actually determines how marketable the player is and helps that player actually landing NIL deals. Carolina Rise funds Park Avenue, I believe now, because the university cannot. James Kendall says, man, just when I thought we had the adults, or just when we thought the adults are back in control of our university. I could not read that sentence for some reason. Anyways, guys, it's I will say this, though. It's the NIL world. It's the wild, wild west. People are learning as we go, and this is a learning lesson, hopefully, for all. So we'll just leave it at that. Hopefully this is a learning lesson. So anyways, let's go back into your questions. Aaron Freeman, thank you for bringing us back onto the field. Do you see Beamer Ball focus on the special teams this year? Aaron, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, special team success will have to do with a lot of our success this year. And I think you heard Brandon Marcello talk about that, is that the scary thing is that that's something really hard to translate year to year. And nobody wants to hear that, but it is. It's hard to depend on special teams to not just be, a positive for you, a net positive, but to literally win football games. It's hard to depend on that. It is. It's tough to depend on that. Jeff Gulich, who scores more touchdowns, our defense or our special teams? I will go with defense. Corey Bridges, after seeing Dak put on 15 pounds, do you have more optimism for the run game? Corey, no, I do not. I love what I'm seeing from the Carry-On Joyner. I love seeing the fact that he's bulked up. He's ready to embrace that running back role. But no, Corey, it doesn't really change my mindset. It doesn't change my thought process on what you have on the offensive line, the question marks at the running back position. The fact, Corey, that the Carry-On Joyner's never played running back as a true running back. So my questions remain, but it is encouraging to see that from the Carry-On Joyner. Guys, that being said, over under Austin Gregory, over under remaining breaks for Chris said at 1. Projected time, 6 minutes from now. You missed that, Austin, because we're going to jump into one final break right now on the other side. We'll close out the show in style, taking your questions, your comments, your calls, and more here on the Daily Crow. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back. Final 13 minutes or so here on the Daily Crow, taking your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Monday. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you. Let's see. We got a text here from the great Robbie Davis. How about it? Robbie Davis firing off a text. We just get to it. Let's see. What's up, Chris? It's Robbie Davis, a.k.a. the Zaxby's Hall of Famer. I just wanted you to know that this time next week, I will have my game-by-game prediction ready. Go Gamecocks. And to heck with that team in the upstate. Have a great week. Jeff Gullidge says, who in the secondary will lead this team in interceptions? I will go with DQ Smith. I think the guy has a knack for the ball. I'll go DQ Smith. Barrett Salee tweeting this out. The regents of the University of California have called a special meeting for August the 8th, tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific time, to discuss UC Berkeley Pac-12 conference membership. So, sounds like the Pac-12 is making moves. Here's a funny question. Jonathan Malfrey says, would you be willing to do a sit-down dinner with Justin King if it meant the Gamecocks and win 11 games? Jonathan, absolutely. I don't hate the guy. I don't, like, the feelings aren't mutual. You know what I mean? Like, I have nothing but respect and actually admiration for his work. So if there's beef, it's one-sided. And for the Gamecocks to win 11 games, yeah, sure. I'm sure if we sat down, I could find some common ground with this human being and we could conversate, have a fantastic time, and then we win 11 games. Like, and I would put even if I didn't feel that way, that's a situation where you put your own interests aside for the betterment of the entire Gamecock nation. I'd be a selfish asshole if I wouldn't do that. Are you kidding me? Humbucker75, love the content you've been putting out with Crane. Any plans to go on their show soon? You got to ask Jake Crane. Hey, listen, if you want me on Jake Crane's show, go tag Jake Crane and tell him. Because he's been saying that for a while, but it hadn't happened for some reason. Hadn't happened. I don't know why. Austin says, I don't see why most fan bases feel the need to belittle other fan bases in college football. And for the Georgia fans reading this, belittle means to talk down upon. I see what you did there, Austin Gregory. I see what you did there. Frank says, if we win 11, I'm buying Robbie a chicken sandwich. I'm sure he would take it with the quickness. I'm sure he would take it. Austin says, let's see. Playing in helmets and shoulder pads today, 104 degrees, heat index in Columbia. Feel for those guys. Yeah, it's hot. It's very, very hot, no question. It is very hot. So, guys, we got some really exciting interviews and conversations upcoming here soon. I know for a fact Thursday night, we are jumping on at 8:15 Eastern with Dave Shoemate of Mach 10 Sports to talk all things Gamecocks. I'm actually going on his show. Wednesday morning, I'm talking with Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South. Thursday night, also, we're talking to my good friend Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Previews. We got some other conversations lined up as well. You'll hear a lot of these convos, by the way, the week of the 21st through the 25th. That's the week we're going to be out of town, no TDC. I'll be in Montana. But the podcast will continue to roll. You're going to hear the podcast. You're also going to hear me talk Vandy, Hawaii, give my thoughts on the game, give my prediction, give my bets if there's any that I like in that ball game, and my best bets for week 0, my favorite prize picks plays. Going to be a ton of fun, guys. So the podcast is going to be popping that week, but TDC will not happen. Let's see. Again, the Gamecocks were just outside of the USA Today coaches poll. Preseason top 25. And here's the thing, though. South Carolina at 27. You beat North Carolina, you're ranked. And you got Furman week 2. That will set up a ranked matchup in Athens. And, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs sit number 1 in the country in the preseason. So, Austin Gregory, he says, what's your offensive game plan for A&M? Austin Gregory, you want to know my offensive game plan? We're going to run the same damn playbook, and we better execute better tonight. Bottom line. Bottom line. Play calls are overrated. Players are underrated. And they are who win the games. Spencer Rattler throwing 7 picks. There's not a freaking system in America, Austin, that would have fixed that. I can tell you that right now. Austin Gregory beating a ranked team in week 1 would set up for a great season. No doubt. I mean, that's, it's a tone setter, man. If South Carolina is going to get to 8 or maybe 9 wins, beat UNC, it's a tone setter. It's absolutely a tone setter. No question. No question. Anyways, guys. 843-790-3377. Any last-minute questions, comments, calls as well? Let's see. 2023 preseason stats Perform FCS Top 25 presented by FedEx Ground has been released. Furman is ranked number 6. South Carolina, of course, taking on the Furman Paladins in week 2 at Willie B. Furman number 6. That is not your typical FCS game. I mean, Carolina's going to win, right? They're going to win. But I'm telling you right now, man, that's not your typical FCS ball game. Not your typical FCS ball game. Austin Gregory, what's the longest episode of TDC you've ever done? Of TDC specifically, I mean, it's 3 hours. 3 hours for sure. And 3 hours, Austin, I love you guys, but I right now, 3 hours is plenty. Who knows, right? I mean, I never thought that we'd go to 3. I thought 2 was, we were locked in at 2 hours forever, and sure enough, we're at 3 now. So, you never know. You could see that change. You could absolutely see that change. It's funny, though, Austin, if you go back, we started the Daily Crow at 1 hour. It was 1 hour for quite a while. I forget when we went to 2 because we started the Daily Crow in 2020, believe it or not. It's wild to think it's been going on that long, but it feels like we just started yesterday. But we started the Daily Crow in 2020. And then I think the week of kickoff 2021, we went to 2 hours. And we were 2 hours, obviously, up until, May of this year. So we were at 2 hours for quite a while. But now at 3, 4 would be a lot, man. 4 would really be a long show. That'd be a long, long show. Take up a lot of the day. A lot of the day. 4 hours is not a small chunk of time. So, Jonathan says, what's your expectations for Gamecocks men's basketball? A men's basketball question. Jonathan, I would say right now, loosely, we'll talk more about this as we get closer. I would say right now, my expectations loosely are compete to go to the NIT. I still have very low expectations, guys. I really do. I have low expectations at the moment. So I think if you can compete to go to an NIT, if you go to an NIT in year 2, that's a great year. I really think so. That's a great year. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, this team's got potential. Some of the pieces they added in the portal, I know you lose G.G. Jackson, but you added some quality pieces. But I'm just, again, I'm keeping the expectations very, very realistic when it comes to South Carolina men's basketball, man. I'm just very realistic. I don't even think we have an official schedule yet, do we? I don't think the official schedule has dropped. Let's see. Wow, okay. University of South Carolina NIL, Carolina Rise is there. Is this, I wonder if this is all of a sudden, what does this mean for Carolina Rise? They're not the official partner, but that's a positive sign. I don't know.
Call from
John Edwards.
Here we go. John Edward, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. I know show's beginning, but I was just hearing y'all talk about the men's basketball program.
Mhm.
And let me just get your thoughts on this, dude, real quick. It's something I've been thinking about. Do you think maybe it's a blessing in disguise that you don't? I know we lost GG, but do you think it's a blessing in disguise that he's not going to be in the program this year, and we don't deal with the circus, you could call it, everything that went on?
You know, I will say this. Like, if he would have come back, that would have been fantastic. But you do make an interesting point. You do make an interesting point. Just, was it a distraction last year? It was like it was another thing that Lamont Paris had to tackle. So, I mean, to your point, we won't know, I think, until on the court we see it. But it could help them. I mean, it could help them to get away, like you mentioned, from that circus and just play ball. You know what I mean? So, but he's a great talent. You got to replace that great talent. I mean, that's the greatest challenge, but you do make an interesting point.
No, yeah. I mean, I just thought he's just thought of that because I'm not trying to diss the kid, but it's like, he's talented and everything, but it was, he had some distractions last year. Like he didn't, I forget what game it was. He didn't play great, and Lamont brought him off the bench a couple games. I don't think he started a couple games, but I don't know. Maybe I was just thinking about him. Like maybe it's a blessing, despite how talented he is. Maybe it's a blessing he's not there, and we can move forward with the guys that are going to be around Mobley's and you can build through recruiting.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. No,
Not
listen,
feel one and done.
I think there's definitely advantages to what you just mentioned. So we'll see if it helps them, hurts them, what have you, or zero impact. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for sure for Lamont Paris and that team. And
Definitely.
I'm optimistic. I am that they can show improvement. I mean, they have to show improvement. They were abysmal a season ago, so we'll see if they can.
Can't go any worse.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I thought I want to get your thoughts on that because I was just thinking about it. So
Yeah, John
maybe it's a
Edward.
blessing,
Yeah, I appreciate the call, man. Always a
That's it,
pleasure
bro.
to hear from you.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Take care. Great stuff from John Edward and a great way to end the show, guys. Again, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you so much. Let's see. Jonathan says, final question here, or statement. He says, that's king of a casual take. If you can add an NBA player in your collegiate team, then you take him. And that team last year needed him, especially with the roster situation we had. Somebody had to shoot the ball. Indeed, Jonathan. Indeed. We'll see how South Carolina looks this season. Guys, I got to jump off here. We got a meeting happening right now I got to get to. Again, appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live. Also, hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out there every single day. Daily podcast dropping 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Monday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.